Bushiroad Rumble Online 2023. Welcome back, everyone, to day 2 of the White Schwartz tournament. I am once again Tony, aka Toku from Yellow Card TCG, and I am joined by the lovely Connor from Boatstone Sink, as well as Randall from Shizu Cats and Tressa's Collectibles. Boys, once again, please introduce yourselves. Let ourselves be known. Connor, go ahead.
Hey everybody, I'm Connor, Boatstone Sink, ready for some exciting top 8 action. If any of you watched the AO and EU top 8s, I'm sure you got to see some great games there, and hopefully we'll have some more for you here today.
I'm Randall, aka Shizu Cats, and as Tony has noted, also of the Tressa's Collectibles team, and the three of us are going to be your casters once again, and hopefully we'll be able to give you guys the great experience of checking out all of these cool decks that we have in our top 8. And we do have quite a bit of variety for our top 8 compared to some of the other regions.
Yep.
AO, that's a lot of Sword Art Online over there.
AO. SAO.
SAO. Oh my god, I didn't even think about that.
You literally cannot make this stuff up. But yes, we are so excited to start bringing to you the top 8 of the NA side of things. This is where the top 8 greatest players in the world who are playing in the NABRO side of things in the remote variant of White Schwartz will be playing for you guys today. Let's go ahead and give them a quick rundown about how this weekend has spanned out. Randall, take it away.
So just a real quick recap of the format before we get into today's festivities. We already had yesterday's games in the Swiss format. We had 7 grueling rounds of Swiss, and today we're going to be having the top 8 cut with the 8 players that performed the best throughout the day. We have, of course, our 1 undefeated players. We have 6 players that ended yesterday at a 6-1 record, and 1 player that squeezed their way in at 5-2. Just like yesterday, all of the games today are going to be in best of 1 format with 35 minutes time into 10 minutes or 3 turns of overtime. And because this is top cut, it should be going into sudden death if the players are at equal damage. So that means whoever has lower damage is going to be the winner. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's pretty much all we have for the format. Connor, go ahead and take it away for the schedule, even though we've already started, I guess.
All right, and this is our schedule for start times. If you're here, you're already watching us. So let's go ahead and look at the prizing for today's event that these top 8 players are fighting for. As we covered yesterday, all 4 of them will receive all 4 of the top 4 will receive a certificate commemorating their accomplishments. The other 4 who lose out in top 8, unfortunately, walking away with nothing other than the accomplishment of having made top 8. The first, second, and third place players will each receive a booster box of the upcoming Quintessential Quintuplets movie set, along with a stamped copy of the Stock Soul Climax from that set. 4 copies going to first place, 2 to second, and 1 to third place. Very awesome card for doing so well in this rather large event.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in on day 2 of the event here, you might be wondering, what is White Schwartz? And for you, as well as Bushiroad, they have prepared for you a very nice video to kind of explain the ins and outs of the intricacies of this beautiful anime on anime heated action card game. Roll the clip.
Weiss Schwarz is a trading card game that adapts anime and game titles, so everyone can enjoy their favorite titles as a card game. In this video, we will show you a brief tutorial to the basics of the game in 6 minutes. Decide who goes first with rock, paper, scissors. The winner goes first. Both players shuffle their decks and draw 5 cards as their starting hand. Discard the cards you don't want from your hand into the waiting room. Then, draw the same number of cards you discarded. When both players are done, let's Weiss Schwarz. First, draw a card from your deck. Now, let's play a character onto the stage. To attack, turn your character sideways. Attack! You deal damage to your opponent equal to your character's soul. As there are no characters facing the attacking character performs a direct attack and gets an additional soul. Flip the top card of your deck as your trigger check. Different triggers give different effects. In this case, it's a soul icon, so your character gets 1 additional soul. Put the card you just flipped over face down into your stock. As you can see on the right, there are various ways in which we can increase the damage we deal to our opponent. For this attack, we will deal a total of 3 damage. The opponent will flip over cards equal to the damage taken from the top of their deck and put them into their clock. With this, we will end our turn. Now, it's your opponent's turn. Draw phase. During the clock phase, you may put a card from your hand into your clock. To draw 2 cards, the opponent plays 3 characters on their stage and 1 on their backstage. While characters on the backstage cannot attack, characters with the assist ability can boost the power or give effects to characters in front of them. Opponent attacks. Any triggers? No triggers. So that's 2 damage. Opponent attacks. Trigger check. A soul trigger. That's 1 additional soul for a total of 3 damage. Cancel. If a climax card turns up, damage cancel occurs. And all cards flipped for damage is put into your waiting room. This means you take 0 damage from this attack. Opponent attacks. As there is a character facing the attacking character performs a frontal attack and gets no additional soul during the attack. No icons, no bonuses. So you receive only 1 damage. When there is an opposing character facing the attacking character, a battle between them occurs. In a battle, the character with the higher power wins. The character with lower power loses the battle, becomes reversed, and sent to the waiting room at the end of battle phase. And that's the end of your opponent's turn. Draw phase. This time, let's clock 2. Let's fill your stage with characters, including our backstage. The center character gets assist from both backstage characters. Now, let's play a climax card. Different climax cards gives you different effects. This climax gives all your characters additional 1,000 power and 1 soul. Attack. No soul icon. 2 damage to your opponent. Your character has higher power, so you win the battle. Attack. 3 damage to your opponent. There are now 7 cards in your opponent's clock. When that happens, that player levels up. Choose 1 among the 7 bottommost cards in your clock to put into your level. The remaining 6 cards go into your waiting room. Then, put the remaining damage into your clock as usual. Each player starts at level 0, and the first player to force their opponent to reach level 4 wins the game. Now, let's try doing it. Your opponent is now level 1 and can use cards up to that level. The higher your level, the stronger cards you can use. Now, make your last attack with your middle character. 3 damage to your opponent. Encore! If there is a reversed character you wish to keep on your stage, you can pay 3 cards from your stock and return that character from your waiting room to its previous position on the stage. You and your opponent take turns until one of you forces the other to reach level 4. But be careful! As a player levels up and gets closer to level 4, the stronger cards they can use. And this covers the basics of what you need to start playing Bushiroad. Detailed rules can be found on our website. Trial decks also consist of everything that you need to get started. We hope you have fun with your favorite titles. Let's Bushiroad!
And thank you so much, Bushiroad, for that very beautiful explanation on the card game we all know and love for Weiss Schwarz. Boys, I'm so excited to get ready and get started in our top 8 match. We got a few glimpses and glances based on what we saw yesterday, what we could expect to see. And based on what we know so far, we know for a fact that we have an SAO. We know for a fact that we have a quintuplets. What other decks do you guys know for a fact that you are super excited to look forward to in our upcoming games? Randall, take us away.
I think the first one that I'm looking forward to is one that we haven't actually seen yet, which is a particular Seven Deadly Sins build. There's a local player in my area that plays this particular Climax lineup, and it's definitely not the lineup that you would expect from Seven Deadly Sins. One of them is, but the other one, not so much. There's no Escanor to be seen here.
Oh.
And Connor, what about you? What are you excited to see?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see this unusual Seven Deadly Sins build, as well as a Kobayashi's Dragon Maid has made it into top 8. The 8 treasure build that we mentioned briefly yesterday, but didn't get to take too much of a close look at.
All right. Speaking of yesterday, let's kind of quickly review our top 8 contestants for you guys. Let's show us the bracket, show us who will be fighting off for the coveted top 4, because that's where the prizes are. We have, starting us off at the top, we have Hawk 2K4 Lacrima, followed by a friendly fire in my eyes between Kisa and Kiora. Randall, take away the last part of the bottom 4 there.
Yeah, sure. For the bottom half of the bracket, we have Daniel Hudsu versus Atlas. And then in our final game of top 8, we have YB versus Hikawa. So we have a few players throughout this top 8 that we have seen in our previous Swiss rounds, those being Hawk2K4, Kisa, Kiora, and Daniel Hudsu. So methinks that out of these 4 top 8 matches, maybe the one that we'll have a look at for our feature match will be the one that has 2 players that we haven't featured yet on any of our stream games, which is the last game, YB versus Hikawa. But we'll see. We still have yet to find out which of our games we will be taking a look at.
And I know what you guys are all waiting for. You guys want to know what the mysterious 4 decks that we haven't gotten to get to look at yesterday, what will they be playing? Let's go ahead and take a look at the decks of our top 8 contestants. Bring us our first deck. Who shall it be?
We're going to be taking a look at each of these deck lists from 8th place going all the way up to first, one by one. So we're going to be starting with Lacrima's Sword Art Online list. This is a pretty standard looking Alice into Silica deck. I don't really see anything that's too out of place here, guys, right?
Yeah, everything looks super standard.
The one thing we did mention yesterday looking at Sword Art is the 1 copy of Demonic Sword Graham. Despite it being such an important part of the deck's strategy, being able to protect its finisher combo and allow it to resolve, especially in the face of other Sword Art decks playing cards like Opposition by the Shield, and all these quintuplets decks playing memory kick backups and things like that. It's interesting still only seeing 1 copy of Demonic Sword Graham in these lists.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting take on like maybe they're trying to have their pie and eat it too, right? Because we do see the split between the Demonic Sword Graham as well as between Virtue and Real, which is basically the reprint version of Opposition by the Shield, the money counter as we all colloquially call it. And basically, we do have a good amount of green, yes, but like you said, I think the main goal is to ensure that your finisher goes off without a hitch. So if that is your win con, you'd rather play towards winning than play towards not losing. And in which case, I myself would probably prefer to move that counter slot into a second copy of Graham. Randall, do you agree or do you disagree with this statement?
I think that like having both is still fine. Yesterday we looked at a list that had 2 copies of Opposition by the Shield and 1 copy of Graham. And I feel like having 2 Graham and 1 money counter is probably the sweet spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think you definitely run the risk of running into some issues only playing 1 Graham if you can't find it when you need it.
Okay, looks like we have our next deck ready. In 7th place, going into Top Cut, we have Atlas running the 8 Treasure Kobayashi deck that Connor alluded to earlier. We've got some cards that we saw in yesterday's Kobayashi deck as well, such as the 2-1 Elma, which is going to be getting very big on offense and looking to memory kick some opposing characters. And just like many of the decks that we saw yesterday, we have cards to deal with level 2s, such as the level 2 killer Iruru. She gets plus 6,000 power when attacking level 2s, and during her battle, the opponent cannot play backups. So, a perfect way to get around Alice strategies where you're going to be using that climax combo to get backups into your hand to defend your Alices.
Yep, and we did mention yesterday while we were watching Kobayashi play, wondering if it had a stock swap, which we do actually see in this list here. The yellow 3-2 event Discussion of Maids is both a stock swap and a search for a character from deck, allowing Kobayashi
Their
to...
waiting room. Salvage
I'm sorry, waiting room. Allowing it to both sort of sculpt for its finishers and set up a better kill turn on the opponent. And in a lot of these games we saw yesterday, decks like Sword Art are going to be building a lot of stock if you don't contest their board. And stock swap might be your best way to win.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this, compared to the list that we saw on stream yesterday, I believe that this is more of what we would colloquially call a package of good stuff in the Kobayashi set. Looking at the level 1 combo, which was absent from the, I would say, the Iruru fan deck, we do have a combo which is fairly uninteractive. It combos on that treasure, as you stated before, and you're able to sit on a 55 stat line, and still, regardless if you get a reverse or not, you can recycle itself out, get a different copy of another card to play. And as Randall has stated before, we're looking to find copies of that 2-1 Alma to just try and get rid of those Alices. So this is like, it looks to be a deck that is a lot teched into respect of the current metagame here. Are there any other cards that stick out to you guys that you guys definitely wanted to point out for the viewers to see? Randall, I'll ask you.
I think one interesting card, this isn't the most exciting card, admittedly, but one that we don't really see too often is the level 0 Kana Brainstorm. This is kind of an interesting choice compared to the usual that we see in the Kobayashi 8 treasure builds, which is normally the level 0 Kobayashi Brainstorm. That one has the secondary ability where if you have a full board of traded characters, you can rest her to draw 1 card and discard 1 card. But instead, we are going with the Awakening Kana in the level 0 line. I would say that it was for color, but it doesn't seem like we have any need for red in this deck. So I think it's an interesting card to choose between the 2 brainstorms.
What about you, Connor? What really sticks out to you in this list?
I also think it's interesting seeing the High Five of Trust level 1 event, which is to sack one of your characters to search your deck for a climax in a deck that's already playing 8 treasures and probably doesn't struggle to get climaxes to hand, between the combo checking top 3 to add any card and the treasures themselves going to hand when you trigger them. It's interesting just to see that much priority put on getting more climaxes to hand.
This guy really just wants to live the 8 gold bar life with a quote-unquote 9th gold bar, I guess.
Yeah, if you're not slamming them turn after turn, what are you doing? Let's bring up our third deck of the day. We are going to be seeing Hikawa playing Hololive. So this is a deck that we're all very familiar with. We've seen it time and time again. This is Kanata Marin. There's not too much to talk about. I don't see anything super unique about this. I see a different ratio between the Laplaces and the Aquas, where Hikawa is actually only running the Laplaces instead of the Aquas. There's probably not a major big reason, but there is that level 3 Matsuri, which is the yellow fix, and having that extra bit of yellow big. What do you guys think about the list? It's a list that we all know, we all love. Question mark. Randall, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So once again, just like the first one we saw yesterday, no Watame early play, which is, fairly important for the mirror match. But even if you're not playing the mirror match, being able to just bottom deck an Alice and clear off a lane to sort of protect yourself from anti-change counter or anything like that could be important, or just to bottom deck and protect yourself from anti-damage, the opposition by the shield counter or anything like that at level 3. There's also no Botan level 3 here, which is something I know Randall and I at least are pretty adamant on being a very important part of the finishing power of this deck. But instead of those 2 cards, we see the level 0 Towards the Future Together Akai Hato, which is when it becomes reversed, you can check top 3 for a climax to put to hand. So really prioritizing, I guess just like the Kobayashi deck, getting its climaxes to hand to be able to play its combos and finding that first stock soul for Kanata is a very important part of the deck. So, Randall, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I do want to go back to that comment you made about not having the Watame because this deck also features the 2/1 Toa, and I feel like those cards really pair well together. The 2/1 Toa assist having the effect where you can sacrifice her to choose one of your opponent's characters and move it to an empty slot on board. This is a really powerful ability when used in tandem with the Watame early play, with the Watame being able to use her effect on play, remove one of your opponent's characters in the front row, and then you can utilize Toa's ability to take their back row, move it to the front row now that there's an empty slot there, and then you can kill one of their valuable utility pieces as well. So I think that having one side of that combination, but not the other, is a little bit interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I could inquire about the inclusion of Toa here. So I like to call this like a scorpion ability because it looks like a scorpion like dragging the prey up to the front. What is like the major use case here? Because it doesn't look like Marine is an on reverse combo. Kanata is definitely not on reverse. So do you think that this is to more like cripple the opponent's like resource engine being able to snipe their brainstorms, pull them to the front, and try and like really deny them the ability to crush on those brainstorms? Or is it just here to kind of like have that extra bit of power, have like a refunding stock level assist? What more is there in this Toa rather than just being that level assist?
Yeah, I do think that the main reason that you would run the card is in order to utilize that utility there, or it is a utility build ability that is also like an anti-utility ability in that it targets the opponent's back row. I definitely think that that would be the main purpose of the card, but there are also some pretty niche situations where you might want to stick this in your back row and just buff up your Kanatas to make sure that they're bigger on the defense.
All right, thank you so much for the insight. Let's go ahead and take a look at the fourth deck of the day. We are going to be having Kiora. We are very familiar with Kiora. My man Kiora from Toronto represent, and he will be playing SAO. This is the list that we are familiar with. We saw it yesterday. Also actually running a split between the gram and the money counter, but in a different ratio than what you had proposed. Now that we're looking at it a bit more closely, I'm seeing one of the gram and two of the opposition by the shield. One of the cards that I really want to highlight that never really got featured in the game yesterday is the level 0 like a younger sister Silica. So it's a name that we've seen before, and I believe that this is a retrade. That name just is super familiar to me, but I like this card because we saw it happen in Kyo's game. He wasn't able to produce multiple Silicas, but what I love about like a younger sister Silica is that she kind of counts as two copies of Always Friendly Silica, being able to bond itself to find a silica, and then on play you can also have another chance to find another silica. So having extra copies of itself, but also being a way to like cycle itself out for like a different, better card. I think this card is a huge role player, and people should look into it a bit more, which people do. So credits to them.
Personally, as Alice Silica was actually the first build that I was trying out. When I was trying to learn to play the Alice builds, it quickly became apparent that I really want at least two copies of this in all of my builds. Like you said, the ability to use her on play effect to discard a card and then salvage a character whose level is equal or lower than the number of silicas in your waiting room. This is always able to grab another copy of herself, which you can then use both of their act abilities to grab two copies of level 3 silica in the waiting room. And I feel like having a second copy just allowing you to do that play is very important. And I'm personally not a fan of running just one copy. So we see two here in Kiora's build. Back at the 8th place deck list played by Lacrima, we did only see one copy. So that's just kind of a personal preference thing. I have seen players run anywhere from 1 to 3 copies of the Silica, but I personally think that 2 is probably the safest bet.
Yeah, I agree. Card's super good, just for consistency in the deck. And other than that, I think the other consistency card we see in most of these decks with a similar effect is the Leafa level 0. And I feel like that's usually a 3 or 4 of that we only see 2 here.
Yeah, I think that it's very interesting that we have only 2 Leafas in this list as well. Instead, we've gone for a bit more of the milling engine with 3 copies of Misumi and 1 copy of the Yuki level 0. I think usually we see the combination of those 2 cards somewhere around like the 2 of count with usually more Leafas. And sometimes you see Alice Ricky, which is a card that we also do not see in this list.
All right, so that is Alicization. We already know this led. We already know the deck. We already know the list off the heart. Let's go ahead and take a look at the fifth deck of the day. We are going to be featuring Kisa. All right, once again, another familiar face, another familiar deck. We see this will be the 8 standby Quintuplets deck. We saw Kisa play against Mocha yesterday in the early rounds, doing the Nino Mirror, and both of them playing very well, both of them playing with their respective outs to deal with the board. We do see Kisa teched out with 3 copies of the 1/1 Itsuki Nakano, the Memory Kicker, as well as the 1 Clock Swapper. What do you think this deck needs to do to get an advantage over all the other decks that we've seen? Connor, let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it has definitely identified where the rest of the meta decks are sitting and how it can target them down, especially with the 3 copies of the 1/1 Itsuki. I mean, this deck, normally we've seen quintuplets decks playing 6 1/1s in some combination of the blue and the red. But this one going even further, playing 8 1/1s to just start standbying things out as fast as possible, and 3 of those being hard removal against Alice, especially, which we saw yesterday in round 7. The Itsuki Bomb put in a ton of work against an Alice deck, and the rest of the characters just having Encore, high power lines. Seems like it puts the deck in a really good spot in the meta right now, despite all the restrictions placed on it.
I'd also like to take note. This is something that we brought up yesterday, but the lack of the blue 1/1s in this deck. The blue 1/1 is usually something that you would put in your level zone for blue splash later on in order to enable late game blue cards such as the level 3 Miku. Obviously, we have ways to circumvent that color requirement, either by bringing it out via standby climax or changing into it with the level 3 red Ichika. However, in this deck, we have 3 copies of the Nino Runner. I'm not sure whether Kisa is running this out of necessity for more blue, or if Kisa just thinks that this is a good level 0 profile to be running in the deck. Previously, we haven't really seen too much of the Nino Runner, actually. She is a very strong level 0 profile, and I'm curious to see how well the card does for Kisa in today's games.
Myself as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at our 6th deck of our top 8. We are going to be featuring YB, I believe. Yes, YB. And YB will be playing 7 Deadly Sins. So this is not the list that I think of when I look at 7 Deadly Sins. I think based on the results at Worlds, based on the results of like other previous BROs, I'm thinking about Escanor. But this is a completely different deck. Randall, I think we were talking about this backstage. What is this deck? What is this 7 Deadly Sin?
Yeah, so as with pretty much any Elizabeth deck, you're just looking to spam that brainstorm ability and spam the climax combo. And with the Pants climax from the Hendrickson level 3, getting back that stock soul climax over and over again is much easier than in the usual decks. We're going to be going into the Hendrickson level 3 finisher, which is a very strong card, being able to sometimes be a like burn 1, burn 4 in a way, because it checks the top card of your opponent's deck. And if you see a climax there, you can send it to waiting room, followed by a burn 4. Now, this card is also very stock efficient, only costing 1 stock on attack for the combo. And despite it having a discard cost of 2 cards per copy, he does cantrip on play, allowing you to easily get the hand for multiple copies of Hendrickson, making triple Hendrickson a very easy accomplishment for the late game in this deck.
Yeah, and in addition to the Hendrickson combo itself being a powerful way to close out the game, this deck is also one of the few, alongside notably Bang Dream and Konosuba, that has access to both the stock swap effect on its Diane level 3 and the Dreyfus level 3 having the ability to shuffle your opponent's waiting room back into their deck minus some number of climaxes, 1 in Dreyfus's case. But these 2 cards in combination with each other can create scenarios where your opponent's deck becomes very decompressed very quickly, really no matter what kind of deck state they're in.
Yeah,
I think it's a super interesting deck list to look at as well. So we still see a lot of like the similar lists between the 2 lists of running the Escanor top end and this one running the Hendrickson top end. We still see, as as very common, Melodious, Wielder of Lost Vein, just a very strong generic card. Finds another copy itself. You're able to always constantly get a copy of that 1/0 to attack with, kind of clean out your stock. But instead, what we don't see is that 2/1 Melodious that is used to salvage 2, get selective copies. What is this deck looking to do in the mid game as we transition from 1 to 2 to 3?
This deck kind of just plays its game, looks to compress more, utilize that Elizabeth Stock Soul to continuously compress the deck, and eventually get into a state where it can actually become kind of hard to deal damage to this deck. Sometimes in the upper end of games, you will see this deck reaching stock levels of like 10 or 11, depending on the play style and how much advantage that this deck is able to get. Sometimes it just kind of tends to snowball out of control, where eventually this deck gets so compressed to the point where it will like double Elizabeth Brainstorm, just be able to hit a lot of climaxes, get a bunch of cards back, and then just go through the deck every single turn. But one card in particular that I think is really interesting that we also haven't mentioned in this list is the level 0 Escanor Stock Bomb. So this is a card that we saw a little bit at the World Finals. This card is not just a level 0 Stock Bomb. This can bomb an opponent's character whose level is equal or lower than the number of copies of itself in waiting room. So if you have 2 copies of this Escanor in your waiting room, he can bomb level 2 and lower characters. And guess who's level 2? Alice.
Oh, very cool. Okay, I'm very interested to see how this will perform in our upcoming top 8. Deck name, I hope this works, but let's take a look at our next deck. I do believe that this will be Daniel Hatsu. We did see Hatsu on stream yesterday playing the Mushoku Tensei 8 standby build. This is the fairly standard one, but there's, like, as you had stated yesterday, those very cool tech cards, especially the level 3 Rougeard Battle Stance, being able to just change with the target to be able to replace its on heal, something I would never have thought of myself. So I really appreciate you pointing that out. But also a high count of the 1/1 studying with Rudy Silfiet. And I believe that this is, as we say, just a respect out of the current environment. There's going to be a lot of Alice's. I want to have answers to deal with them. What are your guys' thoughts on this one? Connor, lead me through it.
Yeah, I think especially similar to when we were looking at quintuplets with the 3 Idski 1/1s. This is really just heavily targeting down the Alice meta between all of the really big decks right now, especially the board-based ones, are playing very high numbers of characters that come out early. And these anti-change effects are just super powerful into a meta like that. Anytime your opponent expends a lot of resources into getting a strong board set up, you can typically answer them for less resources than your opponent put in. Especially with standby triggers, you can get these 1/1s out without spending any resources.
One thing in particular that I think is interesting is on the topic of early plays is that this deck is running 2 copies of the Eris level 3 that we did see played yesterday in Hatsu's game on stream. So this Eris being able to go up to 11k power just pretty much for no reason at all, I think is actually very powerful at level 2 when combined with the power boosts from cards like the 2/2 Ghislaine and the 3/2 Roxy. We've been saying throughout the Alice saga that 14k is the number that you want to be hitting offensively in order to force their counter to tie even, which is definitely not what they want to be doing. And having Eris plus Ghislaine boost plus Roxy boost adding up to exactly 14k, I think is a pretty strong part of this deck's game plan at level 2, especially in that specific matchup. And I think that might be part of the reason why we see 2 copies of that Eris in this particular list.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see it make a lot of work. We did see that Hatsu was able to get really good standby triggers out, get onto that really nice curve, effectively hit himself to level 2 to be able to turn on these really strong standby targets, especially that Roxy. Well, let's go ahead and bring us to the final deck that we will be seeing today. It is our X0. You all know him. It is going to be Hawk 2K4 with that 8 standby Nino deck. There's not too much to talk about here. We already reviewed the deck through Kisa's profile, but what are some unique standout cards here that we didn't see in Kisa's deck profile that you think will make a bigger splash? For me, it's good. I'm looking at that 1/1 blue Nino that we talk about so much before. Connor, is there anything else here that really shoots out in your mind?
Yeah, so one of the other differences, apart from the blue 1/1, In the previous quintuplets list we looked at, as far as yellow plussing level zeros, we saw the, I believe, Intimate Sisters Ichika, which has the same effect as the Hololive Aqua level zero to, on death, check the top two and add two characters, as opposed to this deck playing the Ichika Riki, searching one character from deck for the same cost. So it's interesting seeing one deck choosing sort of just quantity of cards off the top versus this deck choosing selective, always getting the one specific card they want. And it's going to be interesting maybe seeing how those two differences play out in being able to sculpt the ideal game plan.
I think for me, the one card between the two that stands out is the addition of the one copy of 3/2 Nino, where when she's in the front row, she gives a 1500 buff to all of your quintuplets characters. This is a card that is not played at all in Kisa's deck, but is played in Hawk's list. And this card, like I said on that last Mushoku Tensei deck, this card definitely helps out your power lines at level 2, being able to bolster your standby targets in order to make sure that you're able to contest Alice and also not get contested by Alice in turn. So definitely a lot of emphasis on the level 2 power lines by the inclusion of this card.
So everybody, that was our 8 top decks that you guys will be seeing today, or at least half of them as we go through our top 3. But we're sick and tired of just talking about the decks. I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of just looking at the decks as well. You want to see them in action. The players want to get into the action as well. So let's get ready to start the top 8 match of BRO 2023 for the White Schwartz NA region. We have on the left Hikawa, as well as on the right YB. It's going to be Mushoku Tensei versus Hololive. Let's get into it.
7 Deadly Sins versus Hololive.
It's going to be 7 Deadly Sins versus Hololive.
So we do see Hololive starting off the game going first. Going to be interesting to see. I believe this one only running 4 copies. Yep, 4 Laplace as opposed to the combination of 6 that we saw in most of the builds yesterday. Still manages to open it. Ideal opening for Hololive. We'll see if 7 Deadly Sins has any way to respond to this 3,500 power.
Well, we do know that YB is packing 4 copies of that level 0 Escanor bomb, and that card we mentioned in the deck overview that it can get rid of level 2 cards like Alice, but it's also the perfect card to potentially answer this level 0 Laplace. However, considering that YB has not immediately slapped down an Escanor onto the board to address it, maybe it's not there, and it doesn't appear to be in the opening hand.
No, but we did see a lot of early game cards discarded for these effects. We saw an Escanor Zero and a Lost Vein Meliodas, both discarded off the Elaine. So this is really just a ton of level 0s in the opening hand, ready to go here.
Immediately into a Stock Soul Climax with that Elizabeth level 0. When the Climax is placed, you mill the top card of your deck, look at the level of the milled card, and then you can salvage a character of equal or lower level than the card that was milled. Just a really nice way to grab additional cards. Interestingly, these lists tend to run a very high count of level 0s. In YB's case, running 24 level 0s, instead relying on the brainstorm effect of the Elizabeth to actually get back some higher level characters usually.
Yep, and
So
we
we're
do
gonna
see
see-
basically a whole level of damage go through there. YB just pushing very hard. Something we talked about yesterday, these decks that need very specific setups by the time they're ready for their game plan. One of the ways you can beat them is just by pushing them faster than they can sculpt their hand to get ready for that.
And I think one of the benefits that Hikoa's deck is because they don't run that level 1 combo that a lot of Hololive decks sometimes tend to run. Because their combo is at level 2 with the Kanata, they're able to play a bunch of just good stuff level 1 cards. We see it in the Sakura Miko Clock on Core. We see it in the Roboco hand fix. And they can just sit on that to just build some stock as they get into their level 2, because that is when they want to be able to play. So being rushed to this point at level 1, they're not fussed. They don't need to set up too much. All they need to do is produce some more costless attackers to get to the costs, to get to the stock count where they are able to convert that stock into some Kanatas, and from there transition all the way into Marines at the top end.
Yeah, so one more card that we did not look at in YB's list when we were looking at it is the level 0 Death Pierce. This card has a basically the same ability as the Hato that I believe is being run in Hikawa's list, where when he's reversed in battle, you can look at up to 3 cards from the top of the deck, look for up to 1 climax, and add it to hand. And if you added a card, you discard a card. So this is in addition to the Pan's Climax that we already know that YB is running in this list for the Hendrickson combo, another way to easily add additional copies of that Elizabeth Stocksoul Climax to hand in order to just continuously utilize that Climax combo over and over and over, which is exactly what this deck wants to do all throughout the mid game.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting seeing how many of these decks, especially the sort of 1K1 or soul pushy decks, as opposed to the standby ones, are playing ways to find additional climaxes to get to their hand. It was sort of a recurring theme throughout these decks.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, especially considering how I feel like these profiles, I think some people know them as like Frederica profiles based off of the original Frederica from Beaufry. These profiles typically aren't very popular because they are considered to be just a little bit slow. They can't mill you during your main phase. You don't really have control over it. You have to get it reversed. And we're just seeing multiple of them throughout some of these decks over the last couple days. And there we see the Stock Soul getting added by the Death Pierce.
And I think it's perfect that the Stock Soul just got added by the Death Pierce at this point, because I wanted to mention that I really like this profile when your combo sits in the back, because some of the times your combos in the front row, it get run over, and then yeah, you might find another copy of the climax combo to slam down for the next turn. But because in decks like this, in Seven Deadly Sins, I'm not sure if Kaguya has it as well, but like when your combo sits in the back, being able to consistently cycle the climax back into hand, you're able to keep your engine in the back, being able to continually play off of that. And I think that's why those kind of cards are really smart when your climax combo is like these level 0 back rows.
Going back to the Toa level 2 that we talked about earlier in Hikawa's list, that might be an instrumental card in trying to keep these level 0 Elizabeth Brainstorms shut down, as you can bring one to the front row in order to reuse, or in order to make sure that it can't be reused on future turns. But I think we just saw Brainstorm hit 3, or was that a 2?
2, I believe, yeah.
So
Which I'm honestly, why be going for the double brainstorm on first deck in the first place makes me think that maybe there were a fair number of climaxes already out and he was not expecting to hit there.
luckily,
this might be
luckily
a
the
panic
combo,
button moment.
luckily the combo does mill out the deck a lot, and luckily we are able to find one copy, salvage at least one copy of a Lost Vein, and we do know that off of hitting 2, we do also have the option of picking up another copy of the Death Pierce just to crash in and go for another mill 3. But between the Stock Soul that we know we have in hand, between the Lost Vein, we should be able to go through our deck quite swiftly and try and get that nice 1/6 refresh.
Yeah, another card that YB runs in the list that is not a card that you see every day is that level 0 Hawk. Hawk has the effect where you can pay 1 and sack him to waiting room to look it up to top 4, add 1 to hand. Another great way to mill through the deck. But one card that I do notice is not being played in this particular list is the level 0 Meliodas that can discard 1, reveal the top card of the deck, and salvage a character of equal or lower level. That card is usually a fantastic way to get more copies of the Elizabeth Brainstorm. But in this case, not seeing that card run in this list. If Hikawa chooses to spec into that 2/1 Toa to try to target these Elizabeths, maybe YB will have a hard time getting it back. But we are seeing a triple Lost Vein Meliodas, followed up by the Climax combo. Going to be grabbing 2 extra cards off of those 2 Elizabeth Brainstorm Climax combos, then going to be sending 1 card to stock, and then followed up by the Lost Vein Meliodases. These can go through anywhere from 3 to 6 cards of the deck, utilizing their on attack abilities to choose the trigger from the top 2. Since you do not have to go into the second card, you can look at the first one, and then if you want, you can just choose to stop right there and just trigger the card that you looked at.
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely going to make a difference between all of these Lost Veins and the combos. Getting to mill through 6 cards that otherwise would have just stayed in the deck between the 1 Meliodas searched out, the 3 potential mills off of the 1-0s and the 2 off of the combos, can really churn through this deck if it's in as bad of a spot as it seems like. And it looks like it might just be going for clean stock here since the deck has gotten small enough.
The card being sent to stock here on that trigger being the level 2 killer Dian that we have seen previously. In this matchup, not really getting too much mileage as Hikawa isn't running any level 2s of note that want to be in the front row, instead going for a level 3 early play based game plan at level 2.
Yep, and YB just deciding which card to trigger here. Choosing to trigger the stock soul.
That's a bit unfortunate. You had to like choose like the lesser of two evils. It was climax. But at least in YB's benefit is that we will be able to get into that very nice clock compression going into our opponent's turn, refreshing with the new deck, and hopefully start to rack up that compression and start to get those cancels. And I'm praying that we might be able to find another stock soul just to keep continuously pushing the momentum, pushing the power, pushing that soul damage, try and knock Hikawa off of balance because Hikawa does have the 4 stock, going to be able to triple Kanata if it desired, but as you produce more and more damage onto the board, those heals become less and less effective, or at least make them more mandatory.
I think Hikawa is probably looking to play, usually on average, you're looking at about 2 Kanatas, so Hikawa has 2 stock to utilize on effects such as the Laplace or Aki Rose that are on the board, potentially a Coco Brainstorm on their next turn. Looks like they are going to be going for the Aki Rose effect. When she is sent from stage to waiting room, you can pay 1 stock, clock a Hololive character from waiting room to the bottom of clock, and then salvage any Hololive character, no matter what level, potentially being used to grab a piece such as the 2-1 Kanata counter that we are seeing right here, and definitely setting up for their next turn quite well. Now let's see if they go with the Laplace as well. Definitely looking for some raw card advantage in the Kanata game plan, as you do need a full board of 5 playable characters in order to utilize that climax combo.
Yeah, if we do have the 2 stock, I think, and if the hand quality is not amazing, I think you might even have to just shoot for it. Just like what you said, like the raw hand advantage, because of Helmet being able to convert whatever 2 cards you find off the top into pieces, I think it's always valuable. And it looks like we find another copy of the backup off of the Laplace.
That is one of the bigger issues with the deck, especially when you get hit to level 2 this fast, is actually having access to all of the pieces in hand that you need for the Kanata setup. With the level 0 helmet being able to, if you want, add 2 copies of the level 3 to hand, but can't add 2 copies of the backup. And it does, every now and then you run into the issue of not being able to get enough backups. So grabbing one off of both the Laplace and the Aki Rose here is very good for Hikawa.
All right, so what are we going to try to see from YB going forward? As Tony asked earlier, what does this deck really do during the mid game? And the answer is honestly not much. A card that we will probably be looking for moving forward is the 2-1 Nanashi, being run at 1 copy in this list. And if I'm not mistaken, YB just triggered that on his previous turn. So going into the level 2 game, we're going to look to pay that card out of stock using an Elizabeth Brainstorm and get it back. And then we can utilize Nanashi's pair of powerful abilities to potentially remove both Kanatas, assuming Hikawa is able to develop 2 copies of Kanata onto the board at the same time.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting as well, YB choosing to trigger the Stock Soul, because as you said, the other card that he chose not to trigger was the Gate, correct?
Yes.
Do you think there's a world where you would have chosen to trigger the Gate here just to get another Stock Soul back to hand to keep going next turn?
I think that's definitely a valid line, especially if like your hand starts to bleed. But with that extra 2 soul trigger that we were able to push out from YB, I think it did cancel, unfortunately. But nonetheless, being able to just put put the pedal to the metal, try and do as much damage to Hikawa as possible. Like I said, like destabilize them before they're able to collect all the pieces required for the Kanata board. I think that's also a valid reason to choose for the two soul trigger. But I myself just having the option of being able to slam stock soul after stock soul after stock soul, and have the engine in the back keep going for me, keep refilling my hand, especially when we are looking to crash our board next turn. Even if we are to play Nanashi to try and snipe one of the Kanatas, I just want to be able to always have something to do in the future turns.
I think it depends on whether or not YB has a climax ready in hand. I haven't been paying 100% attention on where all of the climaxes are, but I know that at least two stock souls are in the waiting room already because they were played, and then there's the one that was triggered. So I'm not 100% sure where that fourth copy is. Here we are going to see from Hikawa the Kanatas coming down. We're going to be playing that stock soul climax and using the climax combo on the 2/1s, sacrificing themselves to the waiting room in order to change into two copies of the level 3 Kanata, each of which will heal 1 damage, followed by the stock soul from the stock soul climax. And then we're going to be going into the attack phase to activate the climax combo of the level 3. It works on the same climax as that level 2 counter to change into the level 3. For each copy of the Kanata, you get to choose 2 characters from your waiting room, and you can add them to either your hand or stock in any way you like. Typically, on the first turn of Kanata combos, we're going to be trying to just get a whole bunch of cards into hand, whether it be counters to defend our Kanatas or additional cards in hand that will allow us to get Kanatas back in case they are answered.
Yeah,
One of the
and
things I like to see from Hiko's board as well is like we said before, we saw it on YB side with the Death Spears. We're going to see it here with the Hachama. And it's weird. I think we might be looking to maybe side on this one, force YB to counter side to not let us filter for the climax for that second turn of Kanatas. But if you're YB and you know that you have your Nanashi in stock and you can mill it out, grab it back off of Elizabeth, I think you'd be more than happy to front into it, force Hikawa to put down another set of stock, another set of hand, force Hikawa to rescope to get those 3/2 Kanatas back in hand, and basically keep forcing Hikawa to scope for Kanata instead of Marin.
Yeah, I think if you're Hikawa here, you're definitely wanting to prioritize just more pieces to keep setting up Kanatas across the turns, since it is more likely that they get answered in this matchup, especially knowing that Nanashi is the top stock here.
I think one interesting card that Hikawa seems to be contemplating adding to their hand is the 2/1 Suisei anti-change counter. Obviously, that card being useful against early play strategies, but YB not really running that much anti-play or that many early plays in his deck. We have 2 copies of the Diane early play, which is the heal to stock, but that card isn't really a high priority to use anti-change counter on, I believe. It doesn't really offer a serious threat against this Kanata board. So curious to see why they would add the Suisei counter over a different counter, such as a second copy of Kanata or maybe the Hachima rest counter.
Yeah, I do think another Kanata backup just to get more setup next turn is probably the better play here, especially since the Seven Deadly Sins is playing stock souls, which don't give power. So the Diane early plays actually only even tie with the current Kanatas on board, not even able to really get over them cleanly without additional power pumps on board. And we saw the Seven Deadly Sins list yesterday playing multiple global 500s or 500 assists in the back, but this deck isn't. So there's really no way that those Dianes are going to get big enough.
Yeah, looking back at Hikawa's side, I'm really just now noticing that they have quite a bit of deck left. Yesterday in the Kanata Marine matchup that we had on stream, we were talking about how Kanata can kind of play as a quote unquote turbo level 2 kind of deck, where you're perfectly fine with going to level 2 really quickly as you're still in the first deck. It allows you to have access to your entire waiting room to utilize with that Kanata effect. But Hikawa's deck seems to be in a position where they might still have a bunch more incoming damage, especially after that first Stock Soul trigger, which seemed to be a side attack for the Hachima.
Yeah, it looks to be a side attack, and it looks like unfortunately YB did refresh the climax. Not gonna get that cancel. Take an unnecessary 3 damage, and there's still 2 more attacks to deal with. So if you're in Hikawa's side of things here, there's like, do we know what is possibly things? So looking at the list here, we do know that YB does not play any anti-changes, so we can safely front here at the very minimum and try and get some more extra damage in there, try and even the race disparity, but we are going to get a nice pair of cancels over on YB side of things, keeping one of the Lost Veins alive, and Hikawa also providing Hachima as a reverse ability to find another set of stock souls to go again next turn. What will YB do? I'm looking for that Nanashi. I'm looking for that 1 bird, 2 stones. 2 stones, 1 bird.
So one thing that I'm looking at here is the 2 stock souls that were just canceled with YB.
There it is.
So that means that there's only 1 stock soul potentially left in the deck, but we are going to be hitting that Brainstorm, grabbing that Nanashi. So Nanashi has 2 abilities that can both be used to great effect against this Kanata board. The first one is just a typical anti-change stock bomb, which will be able to guaranteed get rid of one of the Kanatas. The second ability is when Nanashi is placed on stage from your hand, you mill the top 3 cards of your deck to your waiting room. And then if there is a climax among those 3 cards, you can choose a level 3 or lower character in the opponent's front row and just send it straight to waiting room.
Yeah, unfortunately though, seeing how many climaxes have already come out of YB's deck, it might be unlikely that we get one on the Nashi here, and we do see the miss. With those 2 cancels, Refresh Point, Brainstorm, and the 1 stuck in stock from last turn. The odds weren't great here.
Unfortunately, not going to be able to get the 2 for 1, but we are going to at least answer one of the Kanatas. So, knowing that you can't get both of the Kanatas out of the way here, do you ever consider siding this Hachima? You know that it has the ability to find another stock soul if Hiko didn't already have one in hand. Do you side it, force your opponent to crash in if they wanted to find it, potentially have them lose a cancel and try and run off of that? Or do you actually front into it now, and then with that, you try and force your opponent to lose a cancel as you try and do more damage on the sides?
I think from YB's perspective, the question that you should definitely be answering or asking yourself here is how many copies of the Stock Soul Climax are already in Hikawa's waiting room that can be utilized for the Kanata combo? Because we know that one of them is in stock. It was just triggered on the last turn. If the other 3 are already in the waiting room, then I feel like there's not a really urgent need to care too much about. We are just seeing another copy of the Elizabeth Brainstorm being put here, and triple combo being resolved. Maybe YB did have the 4th copy in their hand already from the previous deck rotation. And I see the level 0 Escanor in the top column. If there are 3 more copies of that Escanor in the waiting room, we actually have a way to get rid of both copies of these Kanatas, as he will be a level 3 or lower stock bomb. So I'm
All right, let's see
curious
here.
to see.
So it's going to get a cancel. It's going to stock shoot the Kanata.
One thing that is notable here is that if this Escanor is able to successfully stock bomb this Kanata, it will pay out a climax, but I think that's well worth it in order to get rid of this second copy, especially considering that Ikawa only salvaged 1 copy of the 2-1 counter on their previous turn. They did not salvage a Helmet Kanata or a copy of the 3-2, so maybe it will be hard for Hikawa to rebuild this board, and looks like YB does have 3 copies of the Escanor in waiting room and can get rid of that second copy of Kanata. Really nice.
2 pants triggers going through the turn there. I wasn't able to pay attention to see if YB did pick something up, but Hikawa going to be able to cancel on that one. It does look like a side attack as well, not letting Hikawa try and filter through the deck to try and find that other set of climaxes. But YB losing 2 climaxes through the attacks, adding 1 to hand, possibly the pants to prepare for the level 3. Let's kind of see what happens on the crackback Hikawa will be able to present.
Well, the Hachima is bigger than the Elizabeth Brainstorm, so you can't kill on that.
Oh, so you may as well side. You may as well side.
Elizabeth Brainstorm being 1,500 power and the Hachima being 2K.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting to see. I know we've had a lot of games yesterday where someone went from level 2 straight into just way too high level 3. And usually the issue was not having enough healers in deck to really stay at level 3 for additional turns and play out that long game. It'll be interesting to see with how many climaxes YB has just gone out if we see that again here. Once again, only having 2 Diane healers as the only healers in this deck.
Yeah, even though this deck only runs those 2 healers and doesn't have a healer finisher like Escanor does, I do want to note that Hendrickson's kill potential is quite high, being a burn 4 at base, and then sometimes even being treated as a pseudo burn 1, burn 4 if you're able to mill a climax off of the top when Hendrickson checks the top card of your deck. We're going to see a Coco Brainstorm coming here from Hikawa. We'll be going into the next deck. Let's see what they can produce in their next deck rotation.
That is true. The kill potential on Hendrickson being so high, and YB does have, I believe 7 stock here. It's a little hard to tell with the solid color sleeves, but 7
I think
would
it's 6.
6. Okay, so 6 is still enough to, at the very least, double Hendrickson plus the Dreyfus shuffle back. Though not quite enough to stock swap if that ends up being the ideal line here.
It's one off the brainstorm that does get us a draw, and we also see one of the stock souls being popped out there. I do believe that one of the stock souls as well that we triggered on Hikawa's last turn will also be stuck. So losing another set of climaxes as we try and move through our deck. I think at this point now you kind of just cut your losses and probably go and scope towards the Marines.
The stock soul was paid out last turn because 2 cards were stock bombed.
Oh, lucky. Lucky.
All right, we see Bay come down here, so this is definitely probably digging for a climax to see if it's worth going for anything, or potentially just trying to filter out cards and set up for a finisher turn.
Do you think if you get a climax here, you just slam it just into this random board of 3 attackers? Because
I would say so, yeah.
It's a pretty good opportunity to try for it, considering that YB was already out like I think 5 or so, and then just triggered 2 more. And it looks like there's still quite a bit of deck left.
Yeah, it was at least let's see, at least 4 out from the brainstorm, 2 cancels and refresh point. I guess 5 because it was the one triggered. So yeah, there's at most 1 climax in YB's deck here. So I would definitely say it's worth just going for slamming a climax and seeing how far you can get.
We're going to see the Helmet Kanata ability used here, both abilities. The first of the bond being used to grab the 3/2 Kanata, and then the second ability to grab the 2/1. And looks like we're going to see the return of the Kanatas. Second verse, same as the first. Looks like the stock soul was grabbed off of the Bay level 0, going to be used to rebuild the board, get 2 more Kanatas, heal 2 more damage, and grab a bunch of cards once again. And this is not looking good for YB. We have 8 damage incoming on this board. Sorry, is it 8? No, 10 damage even.
Oh god.
So we could see YB getting sent to the moon right here. Gonna be grabbing back the Marines.
Very, very likely that YB ends up at least going to 2/6 here. And potentially refreshing to 3/0 depending on how many cards are in deck. And that's, okay, smaller deck than I thought.
Yeah.
But so I mean, still 10 damage coming. There's only 1 climax in there. You're gonna take at least a 4 or a 3 somewhere here.
Well, here's the 4.
Hopefully canceling this one as this is the biggest one.
Oh,
the 4
taking it on the chin.
Now we see a 3 coming in. Once again, playing smart and attacking in an order that dodges a potential refresh counter here.
Refresh counter, another interesting card in YB's list that we don't usually see in our usual Escanor builds.
Do you think the stock investment of the refresh counter is too much for the Escanor builds, or is it more that because like how stock efficient Hendrickson is, that we're able to play this refresh counter in this build?
Well, both of the finishers are equally stock hungry. Both of them, they just pay 2 stock for the card, and then you pay 1 stock for the combo. So There's not really much imbalance between the two, but I do think that Escanor's, I don't want to say reliance, but just the potency of the combination between Escanor and the level 3 bouncers, previously Gil Thunder and now Merlin, now that the restriction list is in effect. I do think that the
Ooh.
potency of that combination is strong enough that you really want to be investing a lot of stock in your late game, whereas Hendrickson is
Mhm.
very functional without any external support. You could be perfectly fine with just playing two Hendricksons on like 4 stock, and you're basically just good to go.
Okay. Finding one off the brainstorm here is very good, especially with a nice refill brainstorm. We are going to grab one of these Diane healers.
Seems like YB is opting to go for just additional turns at level 3 rather than trying to just go for the kill from 2-3 here. Playing out these healers, maybe hoping that the deck is compressed enough, but again, we did see those 2 gate triggers triggered right before refresh here on the last turn, so there can't be that many in deck. We saw there's 4 at most, right? Because there was the 2 in stock, the cancel and the brainstorm. And since there wasn't a cancel on last deck, I believe there's probably another one in hand. So there might only be 3 in deck here this soon after refresh.
So from this position, would you actually consider? I think that from this position, I would consider attacking the Hachima first, and then seeing how much damage comes out of that attack, and then potentially side attacking into these Kanatas. I feel like with Hikawa having 2 copies of the Marine in hand, it's just asking to be put onto the board and just try to kill YB through this
I
uncompressed deck state.
absolutely agree. I think if YB in your situation, and you just look through your deck, you know how many climbers are left there. You know that everybody knows Marine's kill range. Everybody knows how explosive of a finisher that is. Everybody knows how much reach it has. You know that Hikawa also grabbed 2 of them to prepare for the level 3. I think I agree with you, Randall. You try and probably lock them at 2-5 or even 2-6 post refresh so they can't slam down the Marines and kill you there. And then you try and 2-6 to finish with your Hendricksons. But pushing to 3-0 is definitely not something you want to do, especially when your deck situation is like that. Hope and then maybe just hoping that Hikawa doesn't see the deck situation and doesn't call your bluff and just calls down the multiple Marines anyways and goes for game.
Yeah, one of the problems with trying to level lock Kanata Marine is that they have access to a lot of cards at any given time, and a lot of those clock themselves. So even if you only stick, say, a 1 or a 2 by swinging into the Hachima, it's very possible that the Hololive deck could just force themselves to level 3 anyway. It's not as big of an issue here, I don't think, because again, this Hololive deck doesn't play the Botan, so they can't really do any of the more threatening turns with their finishers. But it is still something to keep in mind, regardless. That YB wants to reduce the damage coming in on the next turn by as much as possible.
So what I actually have on my mind right now is the Hachima rest counter that we know that Hikawa added to their hand in the previous wave of Kanata combos. That is a card that doesn't seem to be utilized here, and so it is still chilling in their hand waiting to be used. One card from YB's end that I think would be really valuable in this state is actually the 2-1 Nanashi that we saw on the previous turn, not for the stock bomb effect, but rather for the other effect, being able to kill one of the opponent's characters when placed on stage from hand, although RNG, would allow you to open up one of the lanes and play a bit around that rest counter. So I think that that might be a card that YB might be looking for within the top check abilities when they use Hendrickson on their following turn, assuming they live into their next turn.
Yeah, and especially leaving this this Hachima 0 on board all game. Really, every turn that you can incentivize Hikawa to not play over it also gives you a side attack target for the following turn to continue playing around those counters.
Mhm. So what are we going to be seeing here from Hikawa on this next turn? They did not salvage any of the pieces to rebuild another Kanata on the board. And they're going to be going with a brainstorm to start the turn, hitting two, or was it one? It looks like two.
Yeah, one of each. So we're going to see a draw two. I think it's very possible we just see, maybe if you find a Roboco or a helmet, if you have the climax, you can get another Kanata down very easily. Otherwise, I think it's possible that we just see 3 vanilla swings come out here and hold up more counters for next turn.
I think that
I agree.
I think that if Hikawa does go for the vanilla swings here, what YB wants to see the most is a random level 0 or level 1. Low level characters are what you want to see in the front row, as those are easy
Mhm.
side attack targets to play around that Hachima rest counter on the upcoming turn.
Yep, and we do. Man, I wonder if I'm Hikawa here. I wonder if playing over Bay. I was going to say crash the Hachima in to try to mill through the rest of the deck, but playing over Bay could also give a way to do that. Because the last thing you want is YB to be able to play, say, something like the Dreyfus or the stock swap and just really mess up your deck state before those Hendricksons come down.
Yep. Gonna find a level 3 off of the Roboco on play skill, and that could potentially be the third Marin that we get ready into our level 3 turns. But we will see what Hiko picks up. Going to pick up another helmet. Is this kind of signaling that we have another turn of Anatas coming up? Oh my goodness.
I feel like if that was even on the table, you would have done this play before playing the Miko 1-0. And we're even
Agreed.
discarding a level 3 Kanata here. So I think the helmet might just be for the next deck rotation in order to try to find the Marines, because maybe they're not even in the waiting room.
Just some selectivity. I think I can respect that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, additional Marines could be stuck in either deck or stock at this point. And having Helmet just always gives you access to any card you need.
Directing for 3. We get a cancel on the second card, and there was a Nanashi that would have been really nice to have for the mill that last turn. Gonna direct again with this Miko. We are gonna hit for another 3. Do we cancel this one? We are gonna take that one on the chin. So no lethal yet, unless we get a double trigger here.
What I would be concerned about here on YB's side would have been if Hikawa actually just triggered a single soul trigger with one of the Dians already being off the board. If he went to 3-6, that would be a pretty bad situation, since you would have to try to re-find one of those Dian healers in order to just even have a shot at living into a new deck rotation. But we are getting 2 really sweet cancels off of those 3 attacks. YB looking to be in an okay spot. Going to be trying to build some semblance of a finisher this turn, as I don't think there are any turns left after this. I think it's do or die at this point. And Hikawa just now triggering that climax at the end of the deck and about to go into a new deck rotation. Anything is possible, and I think it's the perfect opportunity to try to go for some Hendrickson finishes if we can get that pieced together.
Yeah, it looks like YB was able to build up. Now we're seeing some of the borders on those sleeves. It looks like 7 stock. So if we do have triple Hendrickson, this might be the time to go for it. Like y'all said, there's a lot of reach on that card, and that could be what's needed to push Hikawa from 2-4, 2-5 with refresh all the way to game. Let's see if YB is able to do it, because this is the turn you do it. This is the turn you do it. We all know how scary Marin is, so you already know that while Hikawa has 2 of them in hand, we clock draw for turn, clocking the Diane healer. We don't need that where we're going, and there comes down one of the Hendricksons.
Yeah, the real question here is it's really finding the climax, because we know 2 of them didn't go back in on this most recent deck refresh, so it might be difficult to find here.
Okay, so looking at the top 3 check from YB there, they elected not to take the stock soul climax. And I feel like taking the stock soul could have been a potential avenue if you have the climax swapper in hand, as it would allow you to swap into the correct climax. But this actually, it hints to me that YB already might have it ready to go, maybe on one of those 2 pants triggers that were triggered on 2 deck rotations ago, right before refresh. Maybe one was salvaged and we just didn't catch it.
Oh, Hendrickson
Well,
into the clock off the refresh.
we know that there was already one climax in hand because he didn't cancel immediately after. So it's possible he declined both of them because there was already the third one in hand.
Okay.
And that's definitely an option. It looks like we're not going for triple Hendrickson here.
Yeah, I'm not crazy, but it
choosing
looks
the
like we
brainstorm.
refreshed.
Ooh.
Oh, okay, at least double.
At least double.
Send second Hendrickson off the top. That is what we love to see. Now, the order on the lane level 0, very important here. If you want to be digging towards trying to find a climax, you want to be using the top check reveal first so that you can filter through a non-climax card first and then try to draw into the climax. That being said, is YB even going to be using that second effect? It doesn't look like they are, and that
Yeah, it
signals to me
definitely
that
already has the climax.
it's already in hand.
I think
No.
so. The question here, Hikawa's deck is very small. Do you try to find the Dreyfus here and give up a refresh point in exchange for taking a climax out of the next deck cycle, or do you just go for it?
I think that having that one extra point of reach might be actually pretty important. So I think we're just going to go for it right here. Probably going to be starting with the level 0 Elaine in the center slot, going hopefully with a side attack. And it looks like it will be a side attack. Otherwise, we would have seen the rest counter coming down here immediately. And this is going to be the first attack for 2.
Yeah, and with this board state, leaving a side attack against the Miko as well, perfectly playing around rest counter here.
So do you think it would have been better here to place a level 0 or the level 1 Miko? Because this now gives side attack opportunities in terms of damage modulation, although YB will want to be attacking into this Miko before attacking into the Kanata, of course. What do you guys think? Level 0 or level 1? It's kind of a hard call, right?
It's a hard call. I like level 1 here because by putting level 1 out and incentivizing the side attack here, you effectively put out a -1 soul counter already, right?
Right. I agree that with how low Hikawa's damage was, still being at level
Ooh.
2, getting the -1 soul could help a lot more than just having the 0 to prevent soul modulation. If I was level 3 already, I would be a little more worried about the soul modulation.
All right, so here we go. Hendrickson finisher on attack. Pay 1, discard 2 cards, reveal the top or look at the top card of the opponent's deck, and you may leave it on top or send it to waiting room. Followed by a burn 4. Gonna
Oh.
cancel on 2, followed by a pants climax trigger. So this is if this lands, Hikawa is gonna be going to 2-3-2, but they're gonna cancel again off the top.
Another cancel off the top. We're gonna go for another Henderson climbs combo here. There is there enough reach with that? I don't believe so.
There is still enough reach, but only barely. It is going to need some soul triggers here to.
Oh, you're gonna have to.
round it out.
You need the double soul trigger to be able
Yeah.
to make the exact amount to get 3-7, and then landing 9 damage in a row after Hikawa's cleaning of the stock, cleaning of the hand. I'm not sure if it's feasible, but that is what needs to happen for YB to win here. So let's hope it happens in his favor. It's going to be the burn 4. The burn 4
does
lands.
stick.
Okay.
All right, can we see a stock soul trigger off the top for YB for lethal to go for 5 damage? Otherwise, YB is basically as good as
Probably
dead.
right.
dead. We did not see a
no
soul trigger.
Okay, it's 1, 2, 3.
The
They
3
ended up
sticks.
taking the 3. I'm very curious as to what those next 2 cards could have been, because if there was that 2 soul trigger, oh my goodness.
Yeah, one extra attack even going through there does just seal the game for YB.
And unfortunately, going into Hikawa's turn, assuming they're able to secure that Marine Climax combo is most assuredly going to be ending this game. YB already out, I think, 5 climaxes with triple Marine potentially gonna be putting up 6 instances of damage, all of which are lethal. Going to be some burn 2s and some swings for 3. Hikawa already with 2 Marines in hand that we know about. Looks like 1 in clock, and I think there might have been 1 in the clock on the previous level. So potentially using the level 0 Kanata that was salvaged on the previous turn to grab another copy of Marine after these 2 are done resolving.
Yeah, and it is interesting. We've seen YB's deck state really this whole game just not be very good at any given point. Lots of climaxes coming out immediately after refresh every time. And Hikawa playing a deck with as many heals as it has. Those heals really paid off and kept him out of kill range. Just with all the Kanata heals.
We had 4 heals via Kanatas this game.
We have 4, yeah. As opposed to YB only playing 2 healers in the whole deck, we saw one point of damage healed off.
I think it's also a bit unfortunate that looking at YB's clock as well, I think I'm starting to finally notice that the refresh damage after that refresh was a Hendrickson, and I do see, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the second carding clock is also another Hendrickson. So no matter what kind of way YB was able to maneuver around his turn, he would never be able to present triple Hendrickson.
Yeah,
That does seem to be the case.
Yeah, it's probably not very likely that YB had enough hand in the first place without brainstorming, since you'd have to discard 2 for each Hendrickson. But with the brainstorm that was used, there wasn't enough stock. So
here they come. The captain of the Pirates travels to go to the future together. Hosho Marine. We are going to get 3 of them out on the board. There's going to be a 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 2-3, 2-3, 2-3.
2-3,
Yeah, 2-3, 2-3.
Burning 2
on attack,
and that's going to be it.
And finish the game for Hikawa.
That is, the win for Hikawa. So they will be moving on to the top 4 as Hololive, the only Hololive in our top 8 here, and I believe the only Hololive in top 8 across all 3 regions.
Really?
It is. There were none in EU, and obviously AO was just all Sword Art. So,
all right, Hikawa, the fate of all VTuber Sims rest in your hands. Bring Hololive to its justice. Bring it back atop.
And the interesting thing as well, I do believe YB, this 7 Deadly Sins. I want to double check the deck log code. Was actually, yes, YP was also top 8 in EU. So unfortunately for YB, 2 losses in the top 8 game here, but still very good showing for this Hendrickson deck nonetheless.
Yeah, very good showing. Being able to make a top 8 in 2 different tournaments in the same weekend, that is got to be a lot of mental tax, like exhaustion. Like, I would never fault YB for like if there were any like small micro misplays that happened in this game, because hey, you played through a tournament, then you played Swiss through another tournament, then you go to your top cut for that tournament, then you come to top cut for this tournament. That's a lot of Weiss over a weekend. So YB making it this far in both these different tournaments, I can only commend him for what he's done today.
All right, and not sure if our other top 8 games have finished up yet, or if we might be waiting on some of those. But otherwise, looks like this game's done. People are just hanging out. What do you guys? What other matchups are you guys excited to find out the results of from this top 8?
Well, let's go ahead and take a look. We don't have it up on our screen right now, obviously. But
don't. I believe the other ones we had Mushoku Tensei versus the 8 Treasure Kobayashi. We had 7 Deadly Sins versus Hololive is what we just watched. We had Quintessential Quintuplets versus Sword Art. And we had another Quintessential Quintuplets versus Sword Art.
I would not complain to see if both of the Sword Arts got knocked out. We already seen way too much Sword Art in the other regions. I want to see something else have a chance to really show what they are about as you get into the top 4 of the tournament. But nonetheless, once again, congratulations to Hikawa for being able to take the win over YB, piloting the Hololive deck to very skillful play as well. Managing to keep the cool, being launched straight from level 0 to level 1 late and then level 2, and sit at level 2 for as long as possible to try and make that damage separation that we did see come up so big. Once again, showing the unfortunate aspects of not running a multiple healer deck, not having finishers that heal.
Yep, and it looks like we do have the results from those top 8 games that we were just talking about. So we can take a look at our updated bracket. We will have for top 4 games, Lacrima on Sword Art versus Kisa on Quintessential Quintuplets. And for our other game, Hikawa on Hololive, who we just watched, playing against Atlas on Kobayashi.
Oh, yo, Kobayashi versus Hololive. That's going to be very cool. So, Randall, what do you think about these matchups?
Okay, I think that Kobayashi is very unfavored in this particular matchup. It doesn't really have any particular tools that can help to combat against the Kanata strategy at level 2. It's just looking to kind of slam bar over and over again and just deal a lot of damage. In particular, I would like to see the Kobayashi deck going up against one of these other 2 decks in the finals, though, despite my perceived disadvantage that I feel that it has in that particular matchup. But I definitely have some friends that would be really excited to see some Kobayashi in these top tables. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be looking at the Kobayashi side of the bracket. We will be hopping to the other side. So if we want to see Kobayashi at the top tables, it will have to be in the finals.
For sure. I think it's, as you said, kind of an awkward matchup for Kobayashi with the level 2 killers and things like that. Yeah. It seems to be built to play against the Sword Art and the Sword Art and Quince deck on the other half of the bracket. Not really looking to play against Kanata here. But we're gonna hop to a quick break, and then we'll be back to see how those top 4 games.
Are we hopping to a break?
Are we hopping to a break?
I think we are.
We might.
I think
all right, let's go to
the next one.
All right, no break.
Ready.
We're just going straight into the next match. Let's get our next match on the way. It looks like it is going to be 2 different players. And based on what we said before, it should be Kisa versus Lacrima. So we're going to see another Alice versus Quint, I believe.
Yeah, this is going to be Alice versus Quince. Same as the round 7 that we saw yesterday. Different players, but same matchup. A lot of the same sort of dynamics probably going on. What do you think the sort of game is going to look like?
Well, the game that we saw yesterday was we saw use of those 1/1 Iskis being used to combat the 2/1 Alices to great effect. So hopefully we'll be able to see those used here again in order to combat Alices in this particular matchup. Other than that, I think that there is going to be some emphasis placed on that memory kit counter from the quintessential quintuplet side, trying to combat the Silica endgame, really test to see if they have the Gram in their hand. If they don't have Gram, which is not a searchable card, whereas the memory kit counter is, then quintessential quintuplets could be giving their endgame a hard time.
All right. Well, this is all theory. We want to see them put it into action. Let's go ahead and get started with our top 4 match. It is going to be Kisa on the quintessential quintuplets. We know it as the 8 standby Nino deck, the 12 standby deck, versus Lacrima from AO playing SAO, representing his region just with the sword. Let's see what both players can do today.
All right, so it looks like players are still shuffling up and getting ready for their game here, deciding who's going to go first or second. And it appears that I believe Kisa will be going first based on that.
One of the plays I want to see from Kisa, if he is going first, is I want to see that Nino Runner get a lot of good value. As stated before, the level 0s in SAO aren't of high power. A lot of them are all of that utility aspect, not really a strong level 0 play, not a strong level 1 play, but mainly to get you into that level 1 where you are really strong and make sure you have the hand that you need to present that Alice board. So if Kisa is able to present that 35 body, I don't think Lacrima has any tools in the toolbox to try and run over it, and Kisa could try and use that to build a really strong early advantage, and then use that advantage to sculpt for those 1/1 Itskis to try and counter those Alices.
Yeah, but on the flip side, the quintessential quintuplets 8 standby build is not a deck that is known for having a very high level 0 line either. In fact, it's really only the level 0 Nino runner in this particular list that is going to be a really prominent early game play. And it's only at 3 copies. So apart from that card, Quintessential Quintuplet's really just not offering much offense itself, having mostly characters between 500 and 2,000 power.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think one of the things with Kisa's Mulligan is I don't believe that we see any great 1/1 targets in the waiting room. We do see one 1/1 target there, so we could see a turn 0 standby to try and set up the board that way. But no runner comes out. We do see the on reverse pseudo Ricky there, and we are going to get that 1/1 into the front. Trigger is going to be a trigger. We're going to hit for 3, and we're going to pass it over to Lacrima. What do you think about this board state so far, Connor?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, right? We talked yesterday about how Sword Art really does want to go first to get that extra turn toward its setup, and I think Quintuplets using the going first turn to put a 1/175 out and sort of start clogging up these lanes is really going to make it awkward for Sword Art to be able to play their characters to start generating resources and milling without just kind of losing out on a lot of damage output that they would get from direct attacks, or just bleeding hand in places that they don't want to.
So we're seeing the level 0 Asuna coming down here as the first play for Lacrima. Has the ability to look through the top 3 to find an event and add it to hand and discard a card. We're going to see the 2/3 money counter being added here. And then we're going to see a second copy of the Asuna as well. I was going to comment on how the first one was played without an anniversary or progressive character already being on board in order to get that 2K buff. But with the second Asuna coming down, that Asuna will be able to receive the buff, go up to 4K power instead of the usual 2K, being able to contest that level 0 Ichika on Kisa's side that is sitting at just 2,500 power. And we are seeing a tri-field here from Lacrima. What are your guys' thoughts on turn 1 going second tri-fielding with the Sword Art Online Alice decks?
I think that really maybe Lacrima is in a spot where if he doesn't tri-field here, he's worried that he's going to go straight to level 1. And going ahead and getting all of this stock now maybe gives the option to. We know there's 1/1/0 event, and if he has more, he could have the option to just go straight into an Alice setup next turn, if necessary. So maybe attacking 3 times here is just sort of a just in case he wants to be ready so that he can go whenever.
I can respect it as well, especially because we know of how much plussing the deck can do off of 1/1/0 Alice. If you have 1/1/0 Alice and you get your deck down to the state where you can use that 1 card from hand to spawn 3 2/1s from the waiting room, it doesn't really matter how much hand you expended this turn as long as you have the stock to do so. So I can respect it. I think it makes sense in the context of what his hand could be. If he already has the 1/0, because it looks like we clocked one of them, or is that the 2/1? I think that's a 2/1, but assuming that we clock that, we have a 1/0 in hand, we have the climax in hand, and then we can just use the event to mill our deck all the way down and use that 1 copy of the 1/0 to turn into multiple pluses. That is something that would warrant this early tri lane.
And the thing is though, in order to actually consistently get multiple copies of 2/1 Alice off of the Brainstorm, even if it's just on turn 2, a lot of things really have to go right for you. You have to have a lot of mill to be able to get down to that deck state. And because you're not doing it on turn 3 and you're doing it on turn 2 instead, it does require you going through basically an entire turn's worth of like draw, clock draw 2, triggering, taking damage. And it really takes a lot of things to go right to get down to the proper deck state. And then you still have to hit the Alices. You're only getting a single shuffle back 2, assuming you only have 1 copy of the Alice in order to try to shuffle back copies of the Alice, of which we know that multiple copies are, or at least 1 copy is already out because it's in the clock. Now, on the Quince side, we do have the level 0 Nino coming into play. As I said, Quince not really known for the strength of its level 0 board, apart from that 3,500 runner that we see in Kisa's list. And so looks like Lacrima is going to be given one of their lanes as a keepsake of this turn. That level 0 Asuna going to be staying on board. Actually, no, it's going to be tying now that I think about it. The Nino Brainstorm having that Snowball 500 effect when one of Lacrima's characters is reversed, going to be able to give a 500 boost and going to be able to boost the Nino up to 2,000 power to tie the Asuna.
Yep, and we see the third Alice 2/1 come out of the deck. Now 1 in clock, 1 in the damage here. and the third being the discard off of the first Asuna level 0 last turn.
Okay.
So with that, counterattack from Kisa, another tri-lane coming from his side of things, knocking Lacrima to level 1, and as we stated before, maybe, as Randall predicted, not really set up to produce the triple 1-0 Alice, because your hand does need to be quite sculpted to be able to do so. Get the mill out. That deck is looking very heavy. That's a lot of cards to mill through if you are looking to produce your level 1s this turn. But one thing that I kind of want to see, unironically, is to kind of delay the level 1 this turn and go for it next turn. Next turn, after Kisa presents his 2/2s and such, that's when you slam down your level 1s and knock through his board and try and make him play on the back foot, as he's forced to always keep up the encores. Now, obviously, the disadvantage of that is that also gives Keats an extra turn to scope for the 1/1s in retaliation for when you do play those 2/1s out. So I think it's going to be a very back and forth matchup here. We saw it in the mirror match. We're going to see it in another game where both players play for board with their strong level 2s at level 1.
Yeah, I definitely think that trying to go for the Alice setup on turn 2 is just too hard. Like we said, too many things have to go right. I think that even going second, you kind of do have to adjust to doing it on turn 3. Now, here's the potential issue that I see. If Lacrima tries to go for another tri-field this turn without using any stock, they're going to be going up to 7 stock. And there is a choice climax buried very deep right now. If we attack 3 more times without using any more stock on this turn, then we could see the climax getting stuck potentially, as it would be second from the bottom. But it looks like Lacrima has 2 copies of the Ironcrad event in hand, going to be able to use each of those to mill 4. And we have the Administrator level 0 already on the board that can mill in another 4. Maybe Lacrima is going for a turn 2 Alice play. 3 Ironcrad events.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
and that does mill a trigger, so we are going to be able to find another copy of the 1-0 if we did want to set up that full board. And I think we do have enough mill. Connor, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking you could get there with 2 events, but having three puts you for sure into the range of being able to go for it this turn. And we know that grabbing 1 Alice at least off the events, he's going to have the shuffle backs. He's going to have the ability to go for the brainstorms here. Question is just whether the RNG is actually in his favor to not just mill 3 on 1 brainstorm like we saw with Pachins yesterday, I believe.
Yeah.
Surely there's no way you mill 3 Alice's off a single brainstorm.
There's no way you mill 3 Alice's off a single brainstorm here.
Bibbidi bop, bibbidi burst, you've been hit by the caster curse.
Oh no, Tony, why would you do that?
All right, let's see 3 Alice's come off the top now. Lacrima actually choosing to put down double of the 1-0 Alice's, putting all of the 2-1s back into deck. There's no way that you can mill 4 off of a mill 3, so that's how he's outplaying us. So let's go ahead and see what will get milled out off of this Alice's, and to see what kind of board Lacrima will develop against Kisa in the upcoming plays.
This looks like a... can't tell how many cards are in deck. It looks like 10 maybe cards in deck. 10 or 11.
We're going to see the first hit. It is a double hit, though.
First one hits 2. Unfortunate. Second one hits.
Okay. 1 left in deck.
Triple?
Paying out the choice that was stuck.
Nope.
1 last try.
Oh, yeah, there are 4 cards left in deck, so we can get 1 more try. 75% chance to get this last Alice here.
It's never on bottom. It's never on bottom, right?
It's always on bottom.
No, it's never bottom because it's not a gate or choice climax, because those are always on the bottom.
That's true.
Oh, okay, that's how we get around it. It's like when you put buttered toast on a cat, which way does it land?
I'm going to pretend you didn't just say that. Oh, I don't even know what that is.
Buttered toast. It always lands butter side down, but a cat always lands on its feet. So if you strap buttered toast to the back of a cat, it can't. It has to land one way or the other, right? Or it's just stuck in the air forever.
And it looks like the 2-1 was at the very bottom of the deck. But we do have at least the choice in hand that we are going to be able to produce at least 2 Alices, get a good consolation prize. And with that, we can try and recuperate for lost time and lost ground that all of the stock we had to burn through this turn and all of the hand that we expended the turn prior to Tri-Lane on turn 2.
So is Alice the buttered toast or is Alice the cat?
I think Alice is the cat and the climax is the buttered toast.
That makes sense.
Because I think you'd always rather... No. You want to eat climaxes as damage to cancel. Therefore, climaxes is buttered toast because buttered toast is delicious.
All right, going back to Weiss-Schwarz related discussion, we have Lacrima attacking for 3 on the first attack. It was guaranteed a soul trigger on the bottom, as it was the last copy of the Alice that we hadn't seen yet. Damage potential on the board currently looking like 8, looking to potentially hit Kisa to 1-6 if all of this damage sticks. And in addition to that, Kisa probably going to be using the level 0 Ichika effect to hit themselves, try to find some additional cards off of the top, maybe try to find that 1-1 Itsuki that we know that can be used to address these 2-1 Alices. The last thing that Alice wants is for these 2-1s to get addressed immediately after the turn they get put into play.
Yep. And last attack here, that is going to be for another 4. Does Kisa get the trip? Kisa gets a triple. Okay. Oh, baby, a triple. Going to be able to use the Itsuki?
Or the Ichika.
Yeah, going to be able to get the Ichika. Oh, okay.
2 more Ichikas.
Okay. Going to be able to refill the hand, a bit unorthodox, but now we need to mill. We need to mill our deck.
Both Ichika zeros clocked climaxes.
Oh, they did, huh?
Yeah.
Imagine playing turn 1 standby, Ichika clocks a climax, then you triple cancel, then Ichika clocks a climax.
Yeah, that's wild. But going to level 1 regardless, does have, a brainstorm in the back, has the 0/0 assist that can sack itself to mill. So probably not actually in the worst spot ever here, really.
Now, you know what's going to happen is he's going to have 1 copy of the 2-1 or the 2-2 Nino climax in his hand. So that's going to be the 7th climax. And then instead of using the 0/0 sack top 4, going to use the brainstorm instead and still going to hit the last climax in the deck. Now, we are seeing the first copy of the Itsuki 1-1 coming out. Kisa, of course, running 3 copies in his list in order to address these Alice decks. We are not going to be seeing a second copy unless we use Nino's other ability, discarding a card, reveal the top card of the deck. If it's a level 1 or higher, we might see that is one of the copies of the 1-1. Do we have the 3rd copy in the waiting room ready to go to address the Alice? It does not look like it. We're going to be grabbing the level 0 Nino runner, presumably to clock to fix for blue, since we already have red.
Did he do the discard draw first?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to say, plays another one to discard draw. And there's the climax. So now you have to choose. Do you brainstorm or do you play the anti-change? You probably play the anti-change and just trigger the climax here, I think.
Looks like it's gonna be a brainstorm after all. I feel like assuming that's the last climax of the deck, or it's probably the second to last climax. I think Kisa might not have a climax actually ready to go in hand already. But with the level 0 Itsuki being grabbed off of the brainstorm, that makes me think that Kisa does have the last climax already in the hand, because if they wanted to save it for the... Oh, what is happening here? Are we going to put a hand of stock into a climax swap? No, it's just going to be...
into the 1-1.
All right, so Kisa able to develop both of the copies of that 1-1 Itsuki. Going to be removing 2 of these Alices from the game for good, as they are both going to be going to memory. Not going to be able to get those back. So there's going to be 1 copy remaining in the deck to use and 1 copy in stock. And we are seeing the 3rd copy of the Itsuki being triggered here. A lot of soul damage coming out here from these triggers. And going to be able to just eliminate Lacrima's entire board.
Yeah, definitely not something you want to see as Sword Art. You know, your whole board getting answered as soon as you put your Alice's down. And that is what we saw in round 7 yesterday as well, I believe, where Sword Art just immediately got their setup and it was immediately answered. And that sort of led to pretty rough situations further down the road.
Yes. I think the one saving grace for Lacrima here is the open lanes that Kisa has made for himself by crashing those 1-1 E-skis. Lacrima will be able to use those to try to get some damage back onto Kisa. However, on Kisa's end, I think that he's really happy about the damage state that he's in right now. Being at 1-0, I think these open lanes aren't really too much of a problem when you're at 1-0, potentially with the 8th climax still chilling in your deck, even though there are 6 cards left. I feel like if there was a climax in the hand, we could have potentially seen it played and on the second turn or even the third turn. So we know that there's 6 in the waiting room and 1 in, or no, 7 in the waiting room because 1 was brainstormed through.
Yeah, I think if you have that last climax in hand, especially if it's the 2-2s climax, you probably just forego sort of expending extra resources to get that last 1-1 into play, and instead use it to get the 2-2 into play alongside the assist and the brainstorm. Should pretty easily be able to get you to the 14,000 sort of out of counter range. So doubt he has the 2-2 one at the very least.
Oh, actually, now that I think about it, I think that Kisa actually is out 8. If I recall correctly, on the first turn that Lacrima tri-fielded, there were 2 attacks that stuck and 1 attack that canceled. Because the Ichika, when it died, it clocked a climax to the 4th slot of clock, right? That meant one of the attacks had to have been canceled, right?
Right.
I think Kisa actually is out all 8. In that case, I would be very happy to be at 1-0 in Kisa's position right now, especially if Lacrima doesn't have a climax to bolster the damage at all here.
Yeah, especially in seeing 6 cards, I believe, in Kisa's deck. That is perfect clock compression there as well.
On the flip side, Kisa looking like he only has 3 cards in hand. Going to have to rebuild a bit here. Going to be looking to trigger some standby climaxes on the next deck to try to rebuild the board, possibly, or maybe hit a brainstorm. And I think what Kisa's actually hoping right now is that the cards that are being sent to clock for this damage are good standby targets for the next deck, because those are the cards that they're going to end up in waiting room. We see 1 copy of the 3-2 combo and a bunch of zeros. Let's see what we have for the last one. We have a 1-1, and I'm not sure what the card underneath it is.
I believe that might be another copy of the level 0 assist.
The pay 1 sack top 4.
Yeah. If not that, then I don't think it's a brainstorm. I believe it is another copy of the assist there.
Oh, actually, I think it's the
potentially
3-2 early
3-2.
play.
Yep, 3-2. Everything has a white background. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like these cards are all using the same set of art. Well, I guess not the assist. The brainstorm is using the same set of art as the early play. Deciding to level the early play, actually.
So looking at this situation, with Kisa's hand being so small, do you think maybe it might have been wrong to, we saw overplay to draw the 1-1, overplay again, hand to stock, and then overplay with the 1-1? That was like a -4 last turn. Like, do you think that was maybe just a bit too deep to go to try to reach that Alice 2-1?
I think in a normal game, you would have thought that after resolving 2 copies of the level 0 Ichika and having them both hit twice, you would have had a lot of hand. But I feel like in order to just stop the 2-1 Alices from going out of control, Kisa felt that that was the play that needed to happen. That being said, the pay 1 sack top 4 did not see any climaxes. Maybe we're going to see a follow-up brainstorm here to try to get some climaxes, get some cards back. We're seeing the level 0 Nino first, revealing the top card of the deck for the discard. Going to be grabbing a level 0 or lower character, and most certainly following up with a brainstorm, right? In order to, or actually, no, you might not even need to brainstorm here. You have a standby coming in that could be guaranteed advantage just by triggering it as well. But we are going to see the brainstorm. I guess Kisa wants the hand quality instead, hitting 2 on the brainstorm. Definitely think that it is always a conundrum of whether or not you should be attacking into a standby that you reveal off the top, or if you should be using it for brainstorm, because either one is guaranteed cards. It's just a matter of where you want the cards, or what kind of cards you want. Do you want cards that have come into play effects, or do you want things that are just gonna be on your board to be used for, you know, attacking and being supports and whatnot?
Right, and I think in a deck like Quintuplets, it's a little harder to want to trigger that standby first and have it stuck down at the bottom of your stock, as opposed to decks like Mushoku Tensei, where so many of their characters can pay 1 to trigger check twice on the next attack that they can trigger at first attack and immediately pay it out, and it's fine. Just not something you see the ability to do here as much.
Here we see Kisa developing 2 level 0s onto the board using the climax swap from the level 0 Ichika in conjunction with her other effect that sends 1 card from hand to stock. So essentially using 1 card from hand as a substitute for that stock for the climax swap. Going to be using the shuffle back 2 to get 2 copies of the, I believe it was 2 copies of the level 3 Nino back into the deck. And at first, it seems like the board is not set to contest Lacrima's board, but if we do see a climax coming down here, we could see a bit of power boosting on some of these characters to maybe try to win a lane or two. We have the 1/1 that was hand encored from the previous turn that can guaranteed clear a lane, but what exactly are we doing here with the power lines? We have the 3/2 Ichika that's going to be standbyed out here, a 2k assist. Going to be buffing up the 1/1 Nino that was hand encored up to 10/5 power with help from the level 0 that was bounced back to hand. Going to be able to contest that 3/2 Asuna early play and hopefully just not getting canceled here, because 3/2 Asuna has that powerful on-cancel bounce back effect that could potentially get Lacrima a +1 and also allow him to reuse his healer.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be if we see this Asuna bounce back. There were definitely some games. I know I saw in, I believe it was AO's top 8 as well. One of their streamed games, a sort of player that just kept bouncing the Asunas back like turn after turn and healing every bit of damage they were taking off. And that's just a really unfortunate spot to be in as their opponent.
We're seeing the 3/2 climax combo, or one of the 3/2's climax combos coming out here. When you have her specific standby in the climax area and you trigger a copy of the 3/2, you get an extra standby. She gains a standby icon. And so we're seeing the reason why Kisa shuffled back those 3/2s with the level 0, trying to accomplish exactly this, being able to bring out the 3/2 Miku from the waiting room, which is going to be in a nice spot, being supported by the 3/2 Ichika going up to 12k, and could be a bit hard for Lacrima to contest, considering that all of their best high power plays in the deck have been eliminated, being those Alice's in memory.
Waiting on something here, potentially Lacrima choosing whether or not to anti-change counter, I think.
We are seeing the cancel come through, and the Asuna will be going back to hand, can be reused on a later turn, although it won't be able to contest either of the characters currently on Kisa's board, with the 1/1 hand encore being at 9/5 and the 3/2 Miku being at 10, or no, sorry, not 10, 12k, and the Asuna's power just being 9k base, being supported by a single copy of Alice Brainstorm on board. So it would be able to tie the 1/1, but I really don't think that's what you want out of a card that could potentially bounce itself back to hand a second time to be reused yet again.
Well, I believe Lacrima did salvage a 2/1 last turn, so we could see a 2/1 come down along with the climax, at which point the 3/2 goes up to 10/5 off of climax power, and the Argo Brainstorm being able to pump another 1,000. could get Lacrima's board to a pretty reasonable power level to contest everything on Kisa's side here.
Probably looking to clock a card from hand here in order to really make use of that Asna's ability to heal to stock. Obviously, if you play the Asna with no cards in clock, you are just playing down an early play for 2 stock. That doesn't really do anything on play, which is not really what Lacrima wants here. Going to be playing that 2-1 back down, like you said. Currently sitting at 9-5 power, will be 10-5 once a final character is placed onto stage, and then we see where Lacrima goes from there. If the climax is indeed in hand, that will bring the Alice up to 11-5, and then with the Argo boost going up to 12-5, we'll actually be able to contest the Miku that has been standbyed out. Tony, we haven't heard from you in a bit. What are your thoughts on the current game state?
So I'm sitting here thinking, as Lacrima, you did get that very nice reward on that early play being bounced back. But because Kisa actually maneuvered around this turn very smoothly, I will say, shuffling back those 3-2 combos, like you said, to be able to get that double standby, but also have some clean stock while you're going at it, to try and produce a board that is hopefully unbeatable by Lacrima standards. Kind of like try and sit on this, force Lacrima to overextend, as Kisa did, to be honest, going into that prior turn where we had to face down the double Alices, which is why we can kind of see that Kisa's hand is starting to bleed a bit. But hopefully, with this board, with that 2K support in the back row, and with the Punisher in the Brainstorm power, try and get that hand differential back, as we don't have to hand on core anymore, and as we don't have to replace our board as much anymore. So I'm hoping that Kisa is able to sit on this board. But if you are on Lacrima's side of thing, you're hoping that you did draw on into another choice to be able to salvage towards your finisher, but it looks like we are going to be discarding to swap, and boom, there is a choice. No, that's a door, so not gonna be able to get the climate combo, but that does get us enough power, and I do believe that this enough power with the 3-2 early play should be able to climb over that 1-1, still taxing Kisa for one more card from hand as he needs to encore to maintain the board. But let's go ahead and see what the damage differential will be after this turn, because that is what matters. We are going to see 1, 2, 3 damage stick, and Kisa is now shot over to 2-4. 2 more attacks to deal with. At least the Miku should be alive, unless it's not, because Argo was able to give power.
And unfortunately, Kisa's 2 counters both being sent to clock by that same attack, so Lacrima knows that there is nothing to be afraid of here. I do think that it is better for Lacrima to be pushing to kill Kisa's board in this position. Kisa with only 3 cards in hand, and realistically, the only way to get cards back either by hitting Brainstorm or triggering, as you know, the board is just getting completely run over here. 2 fortunate cancels for Kisa, but I think from Lacrima's side of things, it is better for Lacrima to be using their resources in order to kill Kisa's board, because Lacrima's endgame is able to get cards back through use of the Silica's on-play ability, so he has a bit of slack in that respect, whereas Kisa doesn't really have the greatest way to get cards back. Here we see Kisa actually 3-stock encoring his 3-2 Miku and hand encoring the 1-1, just trying to keep the quality on the board as high as possible, even at the expense of 3 stock. And we will be seeing the level 0 being placed back onto stage, not shuffling back to. We'll see the 2-2 climax finally hit the climax combo for the first time. Going to be bringing out that 2-2 Nino, which will stand itself by sacrificing the climax as long as you have 2 or more other quintuplets characters, and gaining 1,000 power until the end of the opponent's next turn. Now, I actually think that there is potential consideration to keep the 1-1 across from the 3-2 early play, because it has less soul, and thus it's less likely that that attack gets canceled and the Asna gets to return back to the hand. But instead, we're seeing the 2-2 across from the 3-2 Asna, going in with a 2-soul attack instead.
Yeah, I do think I agree. You just want to take, because even the 1-1 is big enough to reverse it here, right?
Yeah, if you bounce back the level 0, which Kisa did, you give a 1k buff, which combined with the 3-2 assist would bring it up to 10,500 power to get over the 9-5 of the Asna.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that it's probably right to put the smaller soul swing into the Asuna. Even being within counter range doesn't really matter, because, you know, Lacrima feels real dumb if they counter, right, and then cancel, and can just bounce back to hand anyway. Because you're going to want to bounce back to hand to reuse the heal most likely, regardless of whether you're winning that lane or not. So it's a bit rough if you counter there.
Yeah, I think bouncing back to hand is almost always the correct play with the Asuna rather than counter and then bounce back. The fact that it goes back to the hand not only allows you to reuse the heal potentially, as we've seen in Lacrima's last turn, but it's also just additional hand that can be used for the Silica finisher, as that card does require 2 discards in order to use the Climax combo. In fact, if you counter and then cancel, your hand neutral, but you lost stock because you discarded the counter to use its counter ability, and then you got the Asuna back. So it's just really awkward, not a really great situation to be in.
Ooh, three's going to cancel off the top there on Lacrima's side of things, off of that swing. Then we're going to start now go for the 2-2 swing. No trigger here, so that is going to be 2, because I do believe that the soul was donated from the Ichika assist to the 1-1 there, which is why that attack went for 3 damage rather than 2. But this one is going to be for 2 here. Hoping that they stick. 1, 2. Gets the cancel anyways. Always rewarded. Why play down these bounce backs if you're not going to cancel when your opponent attacks into them, is all I always say.
I'm trying to think, was that a swing for 3? Because he didn't shuffle back 2, and then it doesn't seem like anything was standbyed out because nothing on the board is rested. So I'm...
Oh, fair enough.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, the 2-2, the 2-2 itself.
The 2-2. Yeah,
the 2-2 itself.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so with 1 soul being donated over the 1-1, in that case, it makes sense that Kisa did not choose to have the 1-1 across from the 3-2 Asuna, as he wanted the soul output amongst the 3 lanes on the board to be 2-2-2. With that being the priority, then...
Missing the Icy Tail into a 3rd cancel is just really rough for Quince here.
Thankfully, Kisa has regained control of the board.
The board is in Kisa's state now, but like, what are your thoughts on even paying the 1 extra stock, paying the 1 extra hand to Icy Tail at that point, considering you're staying at 2 stock even? But yeah, definitely the main thing is like the hand cost associated with it. Sitting at 2 cards in hand, you have hand on cores at the 2-2, hand on cores on the 1-1. If Lacrima, because you know he has the early play in hand once again, is able to run over one of them, you're going to be -1 for that. I'm not sure if this board is strong enough as it is to kind of maintain it. But let's kind of see what kind of board Lacrima is able to present, because we did see another 2-1 touch the waiting room after this turn. And we do know about other two 2-1s in memory now due to those 1-1 each keys.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how long Kisa expects the game to go on, because with the hand and stock situation as it is, it doesn't seem like he has very much gas left in the tank. The best you can hope for the next turn is just 1 copy of the Nino Climax combo, as there are none on board already and only 2 stock to utilize. And then even then, you would have to find the Climax in order to use the combo. So I think the priority here is just to try to use the 3-2 Miku to be your sole extra damage source, assuming that you can hit Climaxes off the bottom. And other than that, just try to vanilla swing your way to victory. But I think that if Lacrima has an even remotely decent hand for level 3, then the ball is in his court.
Ooh.
2-1 Alice is, or at least 1. We have a 2-1 Alice coming back down, followed by level 0 Asuna. Alice representing a 10-5 body on the board. I wonder if Lacrima has another Climax in hand ready to go in order to buff the Alice with the Argo Brainstorm to get up to 12-5 and contest this Miku yet again. With Kisa only having 2 stock this time, will not be able to 3 stock if the Miku gets run over. So this is the perfect opportunity to try to aggress against Kisa's board, I think.
Not going to find an event off of the 0-0 Asuna here, so no hand faces to be done there, but Lacrima getting that very nice triple cancel on the last turn, finding a Climax off of that Asuna as well. And it looks like we are going to once again make great usage out of this early play. This will be the 3rd time that it comes down to be able to make that damage differential larger and larger between the 2 players. especially with Nino, as we said, being that really explosive standby target rather than that large static one. This one's going to be able to run over it, hopefully, if we do see the climax being played down there. But we are going to see the Graham being played. That's going to be able to buff one of our characters by 3k and turn off backups for the turn. So with that, even if you're above by even just 500, this is going to ensure that we are going to get that board wipe. Going to get in for one, going to get in for two, going to get at least cancel that two. That's a good one to cancel. We do at least manage to keep the 1-1 on the board, but that 3-2 Miku is gone for good.
Did I miss something, or how is the Asuna over the 2-2 Nino? The 2-2 Nino should be 10k, right?
Did we Graham on the Asuna then?
2-2 Nino.
2 Nino would be
10K. It could have been Graham on Asuna potentially, yeah.
Graham on Asuna, but then would Alice have been big enough to beat the Miku? Because the Miku
No,
would have been
definitely,
12.
definitely not. Miku's 12. Miku's 12, and Nino is 10. Asuna is 9-5, and Alice is 10-5 before Graham. Graham only gives 3k to one character, so if that was given to the Alice, then the Asuna should not be over the Nino, I think.
I do believe that is the case, and it looks like they're just taking some extra time to figure out what happened here.
And we didn't see a climax there, right?
No climax was played. It was just the Graham.
So there was no Argo buff. Okay, it looks like here's the Asuna getting reversed probably.
All right, so it looks like just a rectification of the game state that Nino should be alive, assuming that Lacrima did front into it. Lacrima would then not have the proper power to donate to it. And especially with now that like with attack order and the Punisher brainstorm have to like really rethink of what happened there. But I do believe what is going to happen is that 3-2 Asuna, or they're just going to rearrange the board in a way that will the 3-2 Asuna is dead to rights. All right, we'll just let them fix the board state as it is, and then we shall continue after it is all said and done.
Just a small unfortunate error by Lacrima, maybe, in that case, forgetting that the 2-2 climax combo does give it 1k power cross turn. If that was the case, you would want the 3-2 Asuna to be attacking into the 1-1, so Kisa might be getting a free 2-2 off of that exchange if it ends up going this way. I think we have a quick pause as the players try to figure out the situation. And I believe the 0-0 Nino that is currently face up on Kisa's board is the card that was intended to be used for hand encore for the 2-2 in order to keep it around.
Mm-hmm. So a quick snapshot of what we see here, while we do have the benefit of both players being in a paused status right now. The resource game has definitely gone down the gutter for both players. We see that Lacrima, especially with this last play now, has lost a hand for the heal to stock, lost the attacker because of the crashing, and then having to crash on the other sides because we're losing many of our stronger attackers, which would have been able to kind of answer Kisa's board. So Kisa, yes, although losing the 3-2 Miku, is able to keep two of his front row, which is effectively a +2 to hand because that's two attackers he does not have to replace. Lacrima now sitting at 3 cards left in hand does have the benefit of playing that one of Argo Brainstorm, which is going to have to put in a lot of work. That's going to kind of be the story of the game here, is that whose Brainstorm puts out the most work to be able to sculpt for the finishers. Lacrima at least has the benefit of being on a higher stock count to be able to, I guess, have less of a stock outcome to play it. Going to hard play the 2-2 finisher, and it looks like, do we have the climax in hand to try and push for damage, or is it just going to be 3 vanilla swings and that's it?
I think it was very fortunate on Kisa's end that he had a copy of the 3-2 Nino in hand. I was just about to mention that there were a lot of healers that weren't in any state to be played, with the 3-2 Ichika being on the field already, one of the 3-2 early play Ichikas already being in the level zone, and then with the refresh point, the second copy of Ichika being put into clock, but we are going to see the 3-2 Nino come down, heal that 3-2 Ichika into waiting room, and then bring it out off of a standby climax. But we are seeing a bit unlucky. 2 standby climaxes immediately off the top. I think Kisa's best bet here is to try to hit Lacrima to as close to 3 as possible without actually hitting him to level 3. But unfortunately, with those 2 cancels, 3 cancels
Three
even,
cancels.
Lacrima is just kind of chilling here at level 2. I wonder what he's going to be playing for this next turn, though, because he just does not have much gas left in the tank, whereas Kisa has a full board developed despite being at a pretty big damage disparity here.
Yeah, it's definitely you know, we see the quintuplet deck taking control of the board here, but really in the end, as long as Lacrima has characters to keep pushing damage, it's going to be possible for him to keep this lead, and that's really not looking good for Kisa, especially with the minus soul counter basically unable to be played in Quints now. You don't really have as much way to stop your opponent from finishing you off in games like this. I think the best we're going to see is just Kisa trying to play as many healers as possible over the next couple turns, especially with the Ichika Changer in play.
All right, so we see a choice climax being put into clock for refresh point for Lacrima. That's a good start for Kisa. Try to come back in this game.
Okay, going to mash the brainstorm there, opting to not clock for some extra hand, just going for an empty waiting room brainstorm. We do not hit. So with the remaining cards in hand, we at least have a 1-0 on Alice on board. Do we try for the 2-1? I didn't think so. We're gonna play another copy of the Ironclad event. 2 triggers, I believe, is what I saw there. Gonna be able to grab a level 2 or lower. And the target here will probably be some sort of hand fix to provide more attackers. Pondering the Alice, incidentally choosing the Leafa instead.
Discarding the backup, clearly not very important at this point. I think what you really want to see with one of these top checks is just an Alice 2-1, and then you just mash Brainstorm and go.
Yeah, that'd be nice to see as well. Holy. I think there's also valid points to actually crash board, deal as much chip damage as possible, to the point where the Silica combo would be able to present lethal. And by doing that, like, just kind of like keep going for chips, keep going for like confirming top checks, make sure that you are attacking clean turn after turn after turn.
The small issue with that is the fact that the Silica level 3 combo does require full board. And with Lacrima's hand getting as low as it is, we're just seeing a bunch of bodies being thrown at Kisa trying to close out the game. But I wonder if Lacrima will even have enough resources to utilize the Silica combo. 4 damage on Kisa's face, going to 3-5. I don't know what the play is here. Lacrima is at 2-2.
Might not need the Silica combo.
Ooh. Ping 2 to ping. Oh, finds a climax off the ping. Okay, do we have a good on play from hand to make use of the Ichika change? That would be probably one of the best ways. Definitely a heal. If not a heal, maybe the Icy Tail. Not the Icy Tail. It's going to be the climax heal. Oh no, not like this.
You say oh no, but I feel like standbying something here and utilizing the abilities from the back row to pump soul might be the soul pump that Lacrima is looking, or not Lacrima, that Kisa is looking for. Additionally, you can actually still use the ability of the Ichika that was sent to waiting room, because when the character is placed on stage from waiting room, there is no rule action yet to remove it from the board. So it will actually prime and be able to resolve in waiting room. So both of these Ichikas will be able to pump 1 soul, despite one of them being played over with standby. And I think that's what we were explaining here. And Lacrima getting more cancels. Oh my god,
Kisa getting another standby. That's going to get at least some extras. Kisa, not like this. if there's any justice in this world. If there's any
my
justice in this
God.
world.
Make it stop. He's already dead.
That's not how you win here, I don't
That's
think.
not the climax combo. You're supposed to play it in your climax area. Kisa,
Oh,
no.
no.
There's no justice in this world.
Make
We
it
see
stop.
the triple cancel. Wow.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, if anyone was wondering if there was a chance Lacrima was going to die that turn, answer was no.
Absolutely no shot Lacrima dies that time.
Absolutely no shot. That was a pretty reasonable chunk of soul damage coming out of Kisa's side, though. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 damage total coming out of Kisa's side there.
Is this 17, 9 raw, 3 standby
And
triggers?
hits the brainstorm. Come on.
Still hit the brainstorm after all that? Man, this guy's just too good.
Without clock drawing. Without clock drawing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 9 raw, 3 from triggers, and 5 from Ichiko back row effects.
All right, trying to find 3 playables to slam for 1-1-1. 3 damage is how you make enough damage to win right here. Probably contemplating, do I just go for game here? I have no minus soul counter to be worried about anymore.
Oh, man. What a spot to be in.
Hey, gonna confirm the Lifa for sure. Is their brainstorm target? First play off the dock will be a mill 3, trying to find event. Not gonna find any, just gonna get some clean mills out there. Looking to go into the next deck refresh already. Okay, so Lifa finds a level 2. Not a soul trigger though.
We've got some people saying he's canceling because he's so compressed with his 2 Alices in memory. Oh my God.
He done did it to himself, didn't he?
Oh
you guys heard it here. Memory kickers are bad.
Oh, shuffling some soul triggers into the deck here, potentially.
All right, start to Liana. Gonna shuffle some cards back into the deck. Oh, are we going for another 1-0 Alice turn?
Probably just shuffling soul triggers back in here, I would think, to try to...
Oh, yeah. It looks like soul triggers back to the deck, yep.
Yeah, get these swings for 2.
What's really nice about shuffling back the 3/2 Silica is that it becomes a potential soul trigger, and then you can always get it back later by using the level 0 Silica's act ability to pay 1, back itself, and grab the Silica back.
Do you think the play here is to keep salvaging Sortolina back to just shuffle all of your soul triggers back into deck?
Okay, Kisa still has 3 climaxes left in his deck. Let's not get too out of line here.
Yeah, shuffle all the soul triggers back to the deck. Kisa refreshes the new deck, hits triple standby again. Boom, that's the 17 damage that we were looking at to get the game back.
Salvaging a 2 soul beater. Maybe we just see it come down for 2 stock then.
Oh, there's the actually trying to make an attack.
Oh, wow.
He is just too good. He is too compressed because of those 2/2/1 Alices in the memory.
That doesn't seem like the play I would have gone for there, but...
Here's the question I have. Kisa on the 3rd standby trigger put the 1/1 over the 3/2 that was supporting the 2 copies of the finisher Nino. I feel like he should have put it on the other one, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Kisa didn't have any expectation of Lacrima actually being able to answer the board, but here we are with we have a 3/2 Asuna at 9. Did he just trigger a climax?
Yes.
His 9th one.
He's so compressed at this point. Oh, we get one
okay,
cancel.
Kisa. Okay, there's justice.
That
There's
was the
justice in this world.
cancel too.
Yeah.
The swing for 2 was definitely the
No
important
trigger. No trigger. Okay, not a trigger. We are okay to take this.
Okay, there is a Silica 3/2 still left in the deck, though. We could see it from the shuffle back here.
any justice in this world. No
Oh, there's
trigger.
not one. I guess he hit it on the brainstorm then.
Gets
I
the
just
cancel
missed
as
that.
well. Okay. What's the missing climax? Do we have a chance of clock drawing for the finisher?
I don't know. With a deck that small, do you really think you do the Alice brainstorm there after shuffling your soul triggers back?
Did that get him straight to refresh though? That did get him straight to refresh at least. So maybe
I don't think you're worried about dying from 2/2 with 3 cards in deck here. Because there's still a climax left in deck too that he might not have triggered.
That's true.
I
Hard
feel like
sell.
just trying to trigger the soul triggers there and like actually close out the game.
Yeah, make more lethal swings. Two pairs of twos going in is game rather than having all three ones to go in. Gonna do a 5 cut to the bottom. Kisa is at 3/5, still a healthy deck as well. So,
All right.
is there justice in this world?
All right, here's the play. So Kisa has 1 climax left, right? I think he's up 7.
Yes.
All right, 1 climax
What?
left. It's the
Do it,
climax.
baby. Do
One
it,
climax
baby.
left. It's the climax for the 3/2. You standby out the 3/2 assist, and then you trigger more copies of the 3/2 finisher to get standbys to summon characters to the stage and pump soul and kill Lacrima. That's the play.
Okay,
Need
the
to
script
see
has been put down. Okay.
11 damage here.
Gonna see the filter. Off the top, please be the climax combo.
Actually, we need 11 damage here, but Kisa, if he has the standby, has 11 damage right now.
Oh, because it would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 from the attacks, 3 from the burn, and 1 from the soul pump from bringing out a character from the Ichika, right?
Yeah, which is exactly enough to get game. But that does require having the right climax.
Apparently, we have an appeal happening. Something is happening right now.
What do you think might the appeal be? Is it another power situation?
Not sure, but we are well into overtime, it seems. So we have some situation regarding overtime, it seems.
Okay. So normally in overtime, I mean, without a doubt, Lacrima was still at level 2. He would normally take the win here. But I myself, I want to see this game come to full fruition. I want to see Kisa get his one last chance at redemption. These last 2 turns of what was it, like 6 triggers in a row for climaxes. Having to
5
deal
out
with
of the
multiple
5 out of the
cancels.
6. Yeah.
5 out of the 6. That's still way too heartbreaking to having to play through that and then end up being a result to time. At least give the man one last chance of redemption, one last turn to try and turn things around with a very big alpha strike. We like finishers nowadays in Weiss, they are lethal. They have such large kill ranges that if it happens, it happens, and it'll be fantastic to see.
Meanwhile, in Kisa's situation, it's looking like his options for lethal include either drawing the last climax or triggering the last climax. Because the triggering the last climax honestly isn't even too bad either. That's 1 soul on the attacker and 1 soul being pumped by the Ichika. So either one of those would be good.
It's still, I believe, two damage short just from triggering it, right?
Oh, he can trigger 2 more.
That's fair.
I'm actually curious. I haven't been keeping track of that level 0 from earlier. It was bounced back to the hand in order to make room to play the 2/2 Nino via the climax combo. If that's still in the hand, that can be used to shuffle back 2 soul triggers as well as pump 1 soul to one of the characters on the board. So that could be another source of damage.
Could definitely be a way to count to 11 here.
Is that what we're doing? We're counting to 11?
I mean, that's how you win here, right? You just got to count to 11.
Mm-hmm. Sword Art, the way you win is by counting down to 9, and in Quince, the way you win is by counting up to 11. That's how it works, right?
Yeah,
but then
sure.
where does 5 come in? It's the quintuplets for a reason. Take 5? Oh, okay.
5 is the number of girls on the prize card that winner of this game is going to be guaranteed.
That's true.
That's heartbreaking.
It'd be a bit unfortunate for of the two in the quarterfinals, the Quince player to not be guaranteed their Quince promo, I suppose. I think we're still on a pause here. Sorry about the delay.
Let's see here. We just played down Daily Routine Nino. That's the hand fix. So we could reveal top. We could dig one card down deeper, blind draw, rip the climax combo off the top, play over with the bouncer, pushing the maybe even pushing the 3-2 up, maybe even pushing the 3-2 up for more soul damage, bouncer in the back, sending more copies of the 3-2 Nino back into the deck. So that way when we trigger through them, we are able to get more standbys out, get more soul allocation, and that's how we steal the game.
That's something that I actually wasn't thinking about in that game state, was pushing up the 3-2 back row. That is something that you definitely want to be looking for in end games where you're just like vanilla soul pushing. When you do have like a 3-2 support in the back row, being able to push it up and use it as a 2-soul attacker is always a really important option that I feel is overlooked quite a lot from some of the newer players, where they think like, oh, this is my back row. This is supposed to be in my back row.
Yeah.
Right.
Back row stays in back row.
All right, so while we get stuff figured out, so on the other end of the bracket, what do we have here? So we had the game that the deck that we saw in the previous game, Hollow Live, the Kanata Marine build, going up against the Kobayashi deck.
How did that go?
I'm looking to see how that went.
Let's see
right
here.
Now.
Apple Pie. And I have word that Hololive was able to take victory over Kobayashi. So Hololive will be in the finals.
All right, so Hololive against either of these two decks in the finals. What are we looking forward to here? So one thing in particular that I would be interested in seeing is how Hololive deals with Alice. So, I mean, it's looking like Alice is going to be taking the victory here, so let's just discuss it a bit. Alice being able to put up boards of 11k bodies supported by counters. Meanwhile, Kanata being able to also put up bodies of their own around the same size. It depends on how many Coco Brainstorms that the player is able to develop. With a single Coco Brainstorm, those Kanatas can get up to 11k, and with a second Brainstorm, they go up to 12, also being supported by counters of their own. I do think that one big advantage that Kanata has is the ability to swing with 3 soul attackers with the climax and be able to side the Alices and then go into a defensive turn where they either force the Alices to crash into the counters or side attack for 0 damage. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, like you said, I think the being able to side attack is really what puts Kanata at a huge advantage in that matchup. Just because both of these decks are so counter step focused in terms of protecting their level 2s. Having the level 2 rest counter always active on Kanata's side to stop any Alices, whereas Alice has the anti-change counter but isn't going to be able to really side to hold up its board very well against Kanata, just because they have to fear any number of counters coming out against them.
Yeah, I do think that the Graham event could be a really hot piece of tech in this particular matchup. We did see it in this game being used pre-level 3 in order to just try to answer Kisa's board. But I wonder if we'll be seeing it potentially in the level 2 game in this Kanata matchup as well. It will be able to stop the Kanatas from being defended by those counters, but what if in the late game you need that Graham event back in order to stop a Hachima rest counter from ruining you? So I feel like it's in situations like this where you might want to see that second copy of the Graham event in your list in order to potentially see both copies, as opposed to the usual reasoning behind running the second copy, whereas it's just to see one copy more easily.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a matchup where it could be really important to have that second copy. Just because, as you said, using it to protect your Alices, it's not something you really have to do in most matchups, but Kanata specifically being a deck with like a very similar game plan. And the mirror too is where it probably comes up a lot. Being able to get your Alice's over the opponents.
So I do have word from the TO staff that as of overtime procedures, Lacrima did end up victorious over Kisa in that match. So congratulations for Lacrima. Very strong cancels that got you the victory in overtime. Kisa, so sorry to see what happened there. I was rooting for you with all my heart, but sometimes that's what happens. And unfortunately, in situations like this, overtime procedures do take precedence. So Lacrima will be joining Hikawa in the finals. It is going to be Alice versus Hololive, just like what you guys said. I myself, I'm very curious to see how it works as well. Yes, the Alices will be siding into the Kanatas, but the Alices will come out faster than the Kanatas. And I'm hoping to see that maybe the Alicization deck will be able to wring a lot of advantage out at the level 1 turns, because one thing that the Hololive deck isn't teched out with is with all the different answers we've seen in various other decks. We see the memory kickers, we see the level 2 killers, we see them in mass, and we don't see that present in the Hololive deck. So if there's a chance for the Alicization to really take the board by storm, it's going to be at the level 1 throughout the game and try and snowball that advantage to the point where you don't care if your opponent puts out Kanatas, and then you can just alpha slam them the next turn after.
Yeah, for sure. It is we brought up the Watame early play missing from Hololive, sort of another way you could answer these Alices on board. But we don't have all these anti-change bombs that we saw in Mushoku, that we saw in quintuplets. You don't have things like that to answer it. But I don't think Hololive is as concerned. It's definitely planning on its level 1 game, getting run over by most decks anyway, and just sort of turning that into card advantage, and then setting up the Kanatas and starting to side for just a very profitable board state, I think.
Now, in a hypothetical situation, let's say that quintuplets did end up winning that and would be against Hololive in the finals. I think looking at the 2 players' deck list, it would have also been very interesting as well. Because of how strong of a tool that 1-1 Itsuki is, we see it so many times into the 2-1, we see it so many times into the 3, and then this will also do a lot of work into the 3-2 Kanatas. But word is that our finalists, Hikawa as well as Lacrima, are ready to finally play their last game of White Schwartz of the day to take the title of NABRO 2023's champion. Let's give them a round of applause in the Twitch chat. We have Hikawa on the left and Lacrima on the right. Let's Weiss Schwartz.
Okay, so we have received word that Lacrima is going to be the player going first, and as we have been emphasizing, Sword Art really, really wants to go first. Gives you a lot of time to, or not a lot of time, but it takes a lot of pressure off you since your opponent is not getting as many turns before you can actually go off with that Alice brainstorm turn. And we are ready to go. So for Sword Art, what are you guys feeling is like the ideal turn 1 play for Sword Art? Because I feel like it's the level 0 Asuna just kind of gets the mill starting, and you can recur it with cards like the level 0 Lifa or the level 0 Silica in order to reuse the effect. That being said, I think that the Misumi is probably the second best card in this particular list.
I think honestly, going first here, you probably don't want to open the Asuna. I think holding onto it in case Hololive is able to put down an Aqua or Laplas on their first turn, and having that 4K body to be able to easily run over the Aqua/Laplas is maybe a better way to go, and just playing something on the side, because Hololive's not really going to want to contest like a Misumi on the side here very well.
The benefits of going first against Hololive as well is getting to choose where the first fight will be. The very first placement of your character determines where the first front attack will be, and against Hololive, you definitely do not want to put it in the center, because that is where the Laplaces, the Aquas will be 35. So forcing your character onto the sides there puts the incentivization on the Hololive player to put their plussing in the center, which then gets you the plus back. Of course, it puts you in a situation of how do I answer this the plus on the crackback, but at least you get your +1 of having your character potentially live. But it looks like Hikawa is able to put out another attacker as well to try and contest the Misumi. Akiros?
It looks like looks like it's the Kanata level 0. So this is a 1-of card. When it's placed on stage from hand, you get 1,500 power until end of turn, bringing her up to 3,500 power. And also, when she's placed on stage from hand, you can put up to 2 cards from your hand into stock. This is typically an ability that's used towards the later stages of the game when you have a lot of excess hand due to Kanata level 3 combos giving you a lot of hand. And you can throw those unneeded cards into stock to use for other cards that require stock. Tech cards, kind of like, 3-2 Watame if it were in this list, stock swap Matsuri potentially, things like that.
All right, Sword Art definitely going to want to probably get as many characters down on board this turn as possible, not just to push damage into Hololive's board and try to get them leveled up as quickly as possible before they can set up, but also just to start building their own resources so they can set up their Alice's really just as fast as possible and start generating card advantage. See the Climax swap to go ahead and get the choice. So definitely has the Climax ready as soon as Alice has come out.
Mhm. Now, one thing that I think is interesting about utilizing the Climax swap here is that it does reduce the amount of stock that Lacrima has on the upcoming turn, unless he's able to secure a copy of the level 0 Lifa, which can put a card from hand to stock. Just as I say that, there we have the Lifa. Going to be discarding a level 2 Alice to salvage a level 0 or lower. Going to grab another copy of the Lifa. And then we have a door trigger on top. Will Lacrima be putting a card from hand to stock in order to utilize for next turn, potentially for Brainstorms? Looks like it. Deciding which one to go with. Alternatively, the other way that you could get an additional stock to utilize for that third turn is to trigger a choice. We know one of the incoming triggers is a door, so there's only 2 chances left. Probably just going to be taking the safe route, putting a card from hand to stock, especially with the door Climax incoming that can replenish that card from waiting room to get the hand back.
Yep, and we just see grabbing an Alice 1-0 off of that.
Definitely going to be wanting to see 2 copies of that Alice Brainstorm for the upcoming turn. Going to be using the Asuna to contest the LaPlus as she is 4K power in the middle. And we have 1 cancel for Hikawa.
So here's a funny narrative we can try and put. So Hikawa is going to be able to hit level 1 first off of the LaPlus as a plussing skill. Now, with this being said, your opponent has put out a fairly weak level 0 board. You have the option of putting out your level 1s, which don't really garnish any advantage. What kind of level 0s can you put out to act as fodder for the Alice's before you put out like some of your other level 1s, which can at least try and attempt to contest, pull out counters as we start building? Or do we just like ignore level 1s completely, keep throwing chumps, and keep building towards the level 2 plan where we really turn online?
I think right here, ideally, you're just putting out like the Miko 1-0 clock encores. They're definitely not going to be able to contest Alice 2-1s, but they give you a lot of damage control, so that if you get stuck 1-4 or so, pushing yourself to level 2 in this matchup is probably just the correct play. So you can go ahead and contest the Alice's as fast as possible, and the Mikos are going to be your best costless way to do that.
I definitely think it's reasonable to continue playing level 0s here anyway. It's not like anything in the lower level cards for Hololive have any chance of contesting Alice's once they are on the board. So we're going to see a Miko Clock Encore, as Connor said, joined by a level 0 Aki Rose that will be able to contest that Climax Swapper, and finally a Helmet Kanata Bonder that can contest the level 0 Lifa. So cleanly getting over all 3 of these lanes, reducing the amount of incoming damage from the opponent. And we're just going to see some chill front attacks here for a little bit of damage. I think the Sword Art Online player is very happy to just see these vanilla swings with no climax, as it means that they are taking as little damage as possible going into their third turn. They're going to be probably just at a very nice and clean 1-0, maybe 1-1 as of that last trigger, or maybe not as of that cancel.
Swing with the Aki Rose here. We do find another trigger. It's going to be the Stalk Soul. That's going to hit for 3. And a Lacrima, as if it is his God-given power, is going to be able to cancel that as well. Now, I guess the problem is, maybe, do you want to extend your level 0 game even more? It is a 2. You want to take this 2, I think. So we are going to take this 2. So back to my statement there. Would you have wanted to extend your level 0 game even more? It looks like you expended a lot of hand to produce those 3 zeros. I'm assuming that you've sculpted for your level 1 game. If you were stuck at level 0, what kind of plays would you be looking to do? Because at that point, it seems that you're just kind of dirtling a bit more. And if Hikawa is given more time as you're dirtling to dirtle on their own side of things as well, I think they are very happy to see that. So taking that 2 damage there, something you really wanted to see from Lacrima's side.
So I think it's a bit fragile as far as whether or not you would be willing to keep another turn before going off. The thing is that Sword Art Online really wants to hit that very specific amount of deck so that you can do the Alice Brainstorm shenanigans. And going past that means that you're going into a new deck, and that is probably not what you want to see happen, as it would force you to have to mill back down all the way in order to try to get your Alice shenanigans going again. I think that in this situation, you would definitely want to go to level 1. If he were to only be at 0.5, you do have the level 0 administrator that could potentially clock you. She has that act ability that sends herself to clock in order to check through the top 4 cards of the deck for level 1 or higher. That would not only accomplish getting you to level 1 in the first place, but would also mill through the deck a little bit, get you to that ideal deck state in order for you to go off with your Alice combos. And we're going to see the first Alice Brainstorm coming down here. I would not be surprised to see I was about to say, I would not be surprised to see the level 0 Kanata getting sniped off the board by the -1k debuff. And not like it's going to matter too much, I think, but this also does cause the Miko Clock Encore to go down to its base 4,000 power, as there are no longer 2 or more other Hololive characters on stage. And we're going to see the Alice Brainstorms come into play probably right now. We're going to see a Leafa level 0 first. Wonder what's happening with this. Perhaps checking the top card of the deck, trying to hit a higher level character in order to get another copy of the Alice Brainstorm. That's exactly what's happening here. Going to be using that Leafa before any of the brainstorms are done, just to make sure that the ratio of high level characters is still high in order to maximize the chance of salvaging that level 1.
Looks like we're just gonna climax count over on Hikawa's side of things there. And I guess, like, yes, despite Hikawa being able to win the turn on the offensive there, to try and buffer some damage, Lacrima being able to use that -500 to snipe the helmet off the board. Guess that helmet wasn't bulletproof, unfortunately, and try and open up more damage as we stated before. Try and push Hikawa all the way to level 2 before they are presumably, hopefully, not set up yet to produce like triple Kanata or even double Kanata. But with how much selective card advantage, not card advantage, but selectivity there is in that one card being the helmet, and Hikawa being happy to throw it out so freely that last turn, my guess is they are ready. They are ready, especially with the kind of board they put out at level 1 as well. They probably have the climax in hand, probably some of the counters, probably at least one of the 3/2s, and with that, they are ready to go the moment they hit level 2. At which point, maybe you lock them at level 1? Question mark. But clock encores exist.
Yeah, that really is the problem with trying to lock Kanata anywhere, is just it has so many effects that can clock itself.
Well, if I can't do damage, I'll make you do your own damage.
I feel like holding onto a card that has the ability to hit yourself is very underrated, especially with how often smarter players will tend to try to level lock you at lower levels in order to keep you from playing more powerful effects. That being said, the Hololive build just kind of runs a bunch of those abilities that hit themselves by default, so I don't think they really have to worry about holding them. That being said, with the Kanata combos, if you ever get to the point where you're sending cards to stock, I feel like it's pretty common for the level 0s to be the priority targets to send to stock off of Kanata combos. And so you might not see them if you really, really want to push yourself to level 3 in order to activate your Marians. You'll see 2 copies of the Alice combo being resolved by Lacrima. Was not able to get triple, unfortunately, but we will see 2 counters being salvaged back to the hand. We have the 1-1 Misumi counter as well as the 2-1 Dicey Cafe Gilbert anti-change counter. And then being sent to stock, we will see probably 2 copies of the Misumi Fukujiro. I would probably prioritize sending the Misumis to stock over the Administrator, as Lacrima does not yet have red, and that Administrator can be a very helpful tool in securing red for later levels.
Just trying to go through all the.
Wait,
Did he pick just 3 cards?
Looks like got rid of the Lifa and the Administrator, salvaging just the 2 counters and then sending the Misumis. Probably thought he had triple combo. Turns out he only has 2. Lifa doing her best cosplay. She's got blonde hair.
Yeah, just got blonde hair, just yellow. Green is a shade. Green has some mixtures of yellow in it.
There we see the unfortunate last Alice on the bottom of the deck. First swing for 3.
Because the Alice really is the cat.
Yeah.
I still have no
go
idea.
Straight to refresh. Okay, we got to educate you after the stream.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Gotta go to the refresh there, finds the 1-0 Alice of the refresh damage, 3-2 Silka being triggered, finds a cancel, very nice cancel on Hikawa's side, and one last direct for 3. It's always interesting that like every time so far that we've seen the Alicization decks go on stage and play, they always end up attacking into their next deck, and then especially in a deck like the Alice and the Silica variant that runs 8 of those like waiting room related plussing triggers, that if you manage to go through your deck and find those again, you just have no targets to pick up. So it always brings the conundrum of, how do I make sure that I get the most value out of like potential triggers that I'll like get through my deck? But yeah. I guess, hey, if you can get that really nice refresh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, usually with the Alice decks, you are just hoping that the 2 triggers, like assuming you end on 1 card in deck, right? You're just hoping that those 2 triggers into the new deck are not climaxes because you would whiff. That being said, if you are able to get like the super high roll and you go into your climax phase with 4 cards left in your deck and you can get 3 attacks off, allow your climax to go back in, that is the dream. But we aren't seeing that here with Lacrima's game. And Hikawa going to be going to level 2. Looks like using the Aki Rose effect to grab the level 0 Coco Brainstorm from the waiting room.
Yeah, it definitely, as you said, feels good when you can hit your first 3 brainstorms and end on 4 cards in deck, or start attacking with 4 cards in deck. But something interesting that I've noticed with both of these decks, with Kanata and Alice, since they obviously want to combo at the very end of their deck, oftentimes you do end up having your climax go into your next waiting room, but a lot of times it ends up being a good thing because you have easy access to your climax swapper to salvage, meaning any climax that you draw on the next turn is guaranteed to turn back into your combo to keep looping. And I found that that's a pretty common way that these decks are able to get their second turn of combo going.
Is it just me, or did Hikawa clock a 3-2 Kanata this turn?
You'd be correct, which kind of, what does that signal to you? The fact that they clocked a 3-2 Kanata, I'm thinking that either they drew that one for turn, doesn't need the third one, or they, playing the Bales, maybe because they don't have the climax.
I'm going to be using Bale's effect both on play and on death. She can pay 1 and discard a Hololive trait character to look at up to 3 cards from the top of the deck, add any one from among them to the hand. That can be any kind of card, character, event, or climax, and you don't have to show your opponent. And so hopefully using that to find the climax. If Hikawa doesn't have the Kanata setup, then this is going to be a very easy level 1 game and level 2 game for Lacrima. What I was going to say, if Hikawa was able to secure their level 2 game, is that Lacrima not having all 3 Alices on the board is going to give Hikawa a free lane for their Kanata to attack into, especially since Lacrima is not yet at level 2 in order to utilize that Dicey Cafe Gilbert anti-change counter. And so that will allow Lacrima to, or allow Hikawa to at least keep some control of the board. That being said, Lacrima does have that other counter, the 1/1 Misumi memory kit counter that can be utilized against the Kanata. So I'm curious to see how Hikawa's level 2 game rolls out.
Yeah, having that Leafa level 0 on Lacrima's board definitely it takes a lot of pressure off of Hikawa to be able to get triple Kanata immediately. Since they can put down the 2 Kanatas in the 2 Alice lanes and have basically a free third lane. Take the extra turn to get the third Kanata out.
Yeah, it looks like they're gonna need that extra turn. The fact that they're pushing up the Hako really does signal that the hand wasn't ready. So Lacrima's early aggression paying off in dividends here, knocking Hikawa that extra level up that they needed the extra time to be able to sculpt for that level 2 game.
We are seeing a door climax off the top. Still need to decide what to salvage. We are salvaging a level 0 character here. Will we see a Coco? Well, we have a Coco Brainstorm already in hand. Will we see a second one potentially? I think a second one potentially is the right play as it allows for a higher board of Kanatas once that board does end up being established for Hikawa. The question is, will a Brainstorm come out here? We do see the Brainstorm.
Ooh, 1, 2.
Well, first one was guaranteed. We saw it off the top check from the Roboco.
Feels bad if you draw the stock soul here and you've already spent all your resources.
Yeah. Stuff happens though.
I don't think it would be too bad. You would be overplaying one character, which I don't think is the worst.
Well, there's only one stock, so I can't get out.
Shoot, you're right. Okay, never mind.
Right.
Right, this is where that one of Kanta comes up huge.
Yeah, I don't even think you go for single here. Even if you had it, you probably just wait.
Yeah, this seems like a chump and pray turn, and then if you can like end Lacrima's turn still at 2-5, 2-4, 2-5, clock draw 2, and then with that extra turn of like dwindling to get an extra 3 stock, turn that into a triple Kanata board. I think that would probably be a better way. Just play for the cancels here. You are going into a new deck. You will have your climaxes back, and try and play off of that.
Yeah, it really is just not the spot you want to be in as Hololive here, like this far behind without getting your board up. If you get the Kanatas up, you don't care as much. But you really have to get those cancels next turn, or you're just falling so far behind. Especially if you don't have a climax to play this turn. Lacrima's only taking probably a little bit of damage here.
And then also, we finally get to see, for once on stream, the Alice's being able to run away with the board state. Many, many times we saw on stream the same narrative. Player puts out double Alice, immediately answered twice with memory kicks, level 2 killers. But here we get to see the Alice's run rampant. Assumedly, unless he was opening up that front row space to maybe do one combo. Oh. But even, going for it.
Wow.
I guess they drew into it.
Okay. Randall, what are your thoughts on doing a single combo? Connor and I both already kind of like put our perspectives out that we believe that double combo, or at least waiting a turn to combo, is probably better. But it looks like Hikawa wants to accelerate the game a bit, go for that one heal, decompress themselves, unfortunately, but at least get 2 cards back, maybe 3 cards out of the waiting room with the combo. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, my first thought is actually, what is that Bales doing in the bottom column? That Leafa is 1,500 power, and Bales is only 1k. Should definitely be the Roboco there, in my opinion, to swing over that Leafa. Otherwise, you're giving him another free card. The Roboco being put in the front row, obviously to buff the Kanata by 1,500 power with her on attack ability. But unfortunately, that's still not going to be enough to get over an Alice supported by the 2k memory kit counter. So I feel like Hikawa is just kind of going for a desperation play here. Just try to kind of push a little bit of damage. Try to find any reason to play that Stalk Soul Climax because he's already a full level behind.
Yeah, this Stock Soul is definitely going to have to put in some work here, I think, for Hikawa to stay in a good spot. Because losing, I mean, the Bay can side, right? So you're losing at least one spot on board with the Roboco. So I don't think you can afford to side for 0 there.
Do you think with the Roboco? Okay, so do you think you would front and buff the Kanata here, or would you buff the Bales? Because the thing is that if you
Probably buff the Bales,
oh yeah,
because I think you just
buffing the
want to side
Kanata,
with Kanata.
buffing the Kanata doesn't really make a difference, does it?
Yeah, no,
Your
because
opponent,
Kanata only goes to 12-5 off the buff, which is still smaller than memory kit counter.
yeah. And if your opponent wants to keep their Alice, they're gonna memory kit counter you regardless of whether or not it's tying or not, right?
Right.
So I guess the idea behind the Bales being in the bottom column is just to try to. Oh, we're seeing a side attack by the Kanata.
Okay.
Wait, so we could have had the
You
Bales
could have
run
just
over
buffed the Bales, yeah.
Lifa, yeah. Bit of a misstep here by Hikawa, I think.
Yeah, we're starting to see the Alice player run away with the board. Normally, this is how Alice starts to run with the game, is when the Alices don't get immediately answered. They're not pressed on hand to present new attackers. And especially the fact that we don't have to be any pressed on hand to present a new attack over the Leafa means that we can go straight into attack. Maybe mill some cards out just in case you trigger, but apart from that, probably just good to go.
I think potentially we see a clock draw 2 here just to try to draw into another choice climax. If it does come up, then you have a lot of advantage coming up off of that. We'll probably see one brainstorm being used here just to try to add some potential targets to the waiting room. Or we can see the Ironclad event instead. Looks like we're going to see one Soul Trigger milled out of those 4 cards. So you can salvage a level 1 or lower character. We'll be grabbing back the level 0 Asuna. And if there's no climax in hand, I'm pretty sure you just put the Leafa in front of the Kanata. And just swing with the Alices into the 2 weaker lanes.
I don't know. The Alice is 11, right?
Yeah.
So it's tied with Kanata.
I mean, Kanata for now, but I'm guessing that there's probably a counter in hand. Not finding an event off of the playover. Going to brainstorm. Do we hit the 2-1 off of this? Okay. I would have been like, oh my god.
Probably just going into the deck a little bit. Maybe if Lacrima has a choice climax in hand, the idea here behind the brainstorm was just to increase waiting room quality. Try to find some better targets.
Yeah, and maybe you get super lucky and get the 3rd Alice anyway.
Oh. Nope.
That's the wrong kind of brainstorm to be seeing climaxes. Honestly, I think if Lacrima has any climax in hand, I think you just slam it down here.
Yeah, for sure.
The fact that Hikawa is about to refresh into a new deck means there's a whole bunch of possibilities for how the damage will flow. And I think that
was that a hit? That was a hit.
Indeed a hit.
Nice, nice. It only took 3 brainstorms, but we're there. We get to refund all 3 of those stock.
Perfect.
Potentially.
Play the choice, not the door. Fiddling with 2 cards in hand. Which climax do you want to play? Oh, going for another brainstorm. Okay. Not happy with the current deck state. Just trying to move through it as soon as possible. Probably going to see one last brainstorm, going down to 4 cards left in deck, slamming the choice, putting everything back into stock, grabbing the best 3 cards from your waiting room into your hand, try and scope for your level 2 game, actually, because you're still at level 1. And then with that, there's the choice.
I feel like he wouldn't have hard committed this much if he didn't have the choice. So
yeah,
sure. Here we go. Gonna be adding a 2-1 Alice back just in case to try to rebuild the board. The Climax Swapper as well as the 3-2 Asuna early play and just stalking away those Misumi and Administrator level 0s. One tactic that I have seen used by some players is to actually send a copy of the level 3 Silica to stock sometimes with the ability to get it out off of the level 0. While It does make sense to add the level 3 silica to your hand directly. It does give you a little bit of flexibility with your hand being able to use the level 0 silica's effect in case you need other cards, utilities such as climax swap, things like that. And with the climax, this Alice is going to be over the Kanata, with Kanata being at 11k and Alice being at 12. So this is going to force the counter from Hikawa if they want to keep their Kanata on board, which they most certainly do. And then off the back of that, Hikawa is going to have one lane of free reign where the Alice left the board, and they're going to have to deal with the two Alices in the other lanes. Oh, that is a lot of important level 3 characters going to clock. One Marin and two Kanatas. Looks like Hikawa is just going to be chilling on one copy of the Kanata if they stay at level 2, but instead they're going straight to level 3. Going to be leveling
Really not
that
what you wanna see.
yellow.
Yeah, this is just really not the spot you want to be in here. You can only heal so much.
Yeah, typically with the Kanata deck, you can just kind of loop the 2-1 and 3-2 to just get a bunch of heals at level 2, as we did see in an earlier game in the top 8. But this time we're seeing the exact opposite. Only one Kanata being played and then going straight to level 3. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. And if this last attack sticks, this could be an absolute disaster for Hikawa, going straight to 3-3. And thankfully, one cancel. But unfortunately, on the smallest attack of the three, going to be using a 3-stock Encore here for the Alice just to maintain full control of the board, especially since Lacrima has two counters in hand, I believe. No, the Dicey Cafe Gilbert counter was actually clocked. So just
Okay,
the Misumi counter in hand, the memory case.
still have at least that counter in hand. Choosing to use the Hako on the waiting room touch. Hopefully trying and find another stock soul off the top here. In Hiko's position, if you were in their position, are you going for another turn of Kanatas? I assume so, because we do see the Marin Climax combo being sent to the waiting room. Two stock left, one card in clock. If we wanted to clock to try and draw, that's definitely an option if we do have two copies of the Climax combo to go for, and then try and do triple Kanata versus triple Alice. But maybe just not clocking so you can save the healers in hand for when you do take damage and need them, potentially a line of play.
I think you absolutely just have to try to get Kanatas back on board here. But the problem, right, is that you only have two stocks, so you have to get the Kanatas on board through the backup changing, assuming you want, three of them, as opposed to just hard playing one.
One thing that is nice is that I believe a helmet level 0 Kanata was salvaged on the previous turn, which could be used to get back the level 3 Kanata that was just sent to the waiting room as part of the clock. Now, for me, the line of play, assuming I got the climax back, of course, right? For me, the line of play was you go for the Kanata combos, you do your preparation for a follow-up turn, assuming you get one. You have to play assuming you get one here. And then you just have to front attack into these 2-1 Alice's here, even though you're giving up the board. You just need to get as much damage as possible. You cannot afford to be side attacking. You need to get Lacrima in a position where Marin on a follow-up turn can potentially go for the kill. That is the line of play that I would be going for here 100% of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You just, I guess if you heal down to 3-0, it seems like a big gap because it's level 1 versus level 3, but it's 1-6, so 8 damage behind. Two swings from a stock soul with two soul beaters could very reasonably actually, catch up there. So I think you have to front and just hope you get one good turn to catch up in damage and go from there.
Now, as we just saw with Hikawa going into a fresh deck, Lacrima is low on deck, going to be going into a new rotation. And so, just like we saw Hikawa take 6 off of a fresh deck, anything can happen with this new deck rotation. We could see Lacrima just taking a full, 8 damage here, potentially. So we'll just have to see what happens. We're going to be resolving 2 copies of the Kanata combo to get back 2 copies of Marin. Triple Marin being a very, very efficient finisher, being able to resolve 3 copies with just 4 starting stock, which is exactly what we're going to have here after the stock soul gives 1 and the 3 attacks give the other 3. Well, it looks like it's going to be 1 card from the Kanata combo being sent to stock and 3 cards being added to the hand just to kind of give a little bit of extra options for the next turn in case you need to use stock for something else, such as a brainstorm.
Or a
Looks
Climate Swap.
like that was a side for 2, actually, based on the 2 fingers being put out. Or maybe it is a front because they are complementing the counter here. Oh, yep,
Definitely
that
a
is
front.
going to be the front. Yep, going to push for 4 damage, praying that it sticks. 1, 2, 3. And if you're in Lacrima's side, you are very happy that Hikoa chose to sweep with the big one first. So this leaves those extra 3 cards out of your deck, your clock out of your deck, as you go into a new one. Hypothetically speaking, let's say that we didn't trigger and then we swung with the helmet first. That would have been for 2. That would have been 2 going in, forcing a level up, and then those cards in clock would go straight into the waiting room for your next deck to be taken as damage again.
Yeah, so I feel like the idea here was to try to force Lacrima to use the counter, as that would force the counter and the stock paid to go back. But I mean, why have your opponent go back with 2 extra cards when they go back with 6 extra cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think
next
that,
attack.
yeah, I definitely think attacking with the helmet first would have been a good idea. It's not like we knew what the top card of the deck was either. We didn't have any top checks used this turn, right?
Right. Oh, is there another counter coming out?
The 2-1 Mito counter, perhaps? Or not 2-1, 1-1 Mito counter?
No, we're just gonna take the 3.
Okay.
6.
Okay.
So
That,
essentially caught up in damage at this point, as long as Hikawa can survive another turn.
ooh, a good trigger as well. Okay, there's the cancel for Lacrima. We are now at 3-0. Board is empty. So I guess one of the interesting things to talk about is the Silica finisher. Is
For 3-1.
has
3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
3-1. Yes. The Silica finisher. Interesting thing to note about it is that rather on play checking for your trait, you actually look at your opponent's board to decide how many you look at. So the stronger your opponent's board, the more cards you get to look at. So Hikawa crashing actually ending up making it harder for Lacrima to potentially find extra copies, potentially find the climax. But we also do know that off of 2 turns of Alice combo in a row, we're probably good to go at this point. But with only this much stock left, it looks like it's going to be a small Dirtle turn, choosing to heal down from 2-6 to 2-5 with their early play heal, Asuna healing to stock. And let's see if we can get some more cancels on that attack to try and abuse more of that early play heal.
I do think it's interesting that Lacrima went for the more conservative line, just going for the Asuna early play, potentially into another turn of triple Alice combo.
Oh my god. Too good.
So the thing
Just
about
wanted
this,
more.
the thing about this is that this doesn't actually impact the deck state in any positive way. So, with triple Marine potentially incoming, Lacrima could possibly get blasted from 2-5. 2-5 is honestly pretty reasonable to die from against most finishers these days. And we know Hikawa has at least 2 copies of the Marine in hand. So we'll just have to see what Lacrima triggers first. This could be a pretty crucial set of 3 triggers coming in right now. See the first attack. These are all directs for 3. If any 2 of these stick, it's over for Hikawa though as well.
That's 6. Okay, next attack. Going to be also for, I believe that's 4.
Cancels.
Cancels. Okay, you're wanting to see a trigger on this attack as well. If you're in Hikawa's C, so you send a trigger. 1, 2, 3, 4th cancel.
Oh!
For the trigger is not the thing that's going to get Lacrima the win here. Wrong game where you want to find triggers. Hikawa, you have one more shot at redemption. Slam down those Marines. Set sail for Hololive Expo.
So
what
if your options are, how many climaxes is Lacrima out at this point?
Lacrima didn't trigger any, so they're only out the 2 that we know about. I think the one that was canceled on the previous attack and the one that was played this turn. So there are 6 left in deck, I believe.
Do you think there is a world where instead of going for triple Marine, going for double and a stock swap is just the better play,
Ooh.
and just hoping that you can high roll the stock swap hard enough to get climaxes. Because if there's still a lot of climaxes in Lacrima's deck, 2/5 Marine might not be enough.
Then you also get to add a potential refresh point into the mix, depending on how far into Lacrima's deck you get. Are
Right.
seeing the clock here to 3-5. I think it's really fortunate, by the way, that Hikawa was not hit to 3-5 off of those attacks and instead just hit to 3-4. Otherwise, you would clock to 3-6 and then be in danger of taking refresh point for lethal. What do we have here? We have the Helmet Kanata,
Helmet.
discarding a Stock Soul. What are we grabbing here?
Oh,
Third Marine. So it looks like we're not going for the double Marine plus Matsuri stock swap plan. Looks like we are just going to be going for triple Marine. We know 2 copies were already in the hand. Climax swapping first.
Climax swapping. So you can't double with stock swap if you have to climax swap, unfortunately.
All right, so we are just going for the standard line here. And we
I
playing our
guess
3/2 Marines.
if you have the hand to stock Kanata, you could still get there, but
True.
looks like triple is just going to be where we end up.
All right, Marines on play effect. Choose one of your other characters and send it to the waiting room. Then look at up to 3 cards from the top of the deck. Choose one of them, add it to hand. One of them, send it to stock. And the last one, send it to the waiting room. So we're going to be using those to refill our stock to utilize for the climax combos, as well as grab valid targets to discard for the climax combo, because she does have to discard a Hololive trait character. Going to be going into the new deck here.
I don't know. I don't know where the stock swap is right now. I don't know if it's something Hikawa even had access to, but do you not think it would have been better to play the Marines first and try to find the climax? I guess unless they knew there's 4 in waiting room. If they already know there's 4, then you have to climax swap. But otherwise, maybe playing the Marines to try to dig, and then if you can find it, you don't have to climax swap. Deciding what to do from there afterwards.
Potentially. But 2 of the cancels from the previous turn were on climax.
Yeah, that's the problem. They might have just all been out of the deck. It's really, you have to stick. You have to stick 4 instances here, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Unless you're hitting soul triggers.
We're going to see the last Marine coming down here. Now, what's notable about this effect is that you don't have to look at a full 3 cards. Hikawa choosing to look at 3 anyway, but I think that looking at fewer cards probably would be the better play, as you reduce the chances of taking a climax out of your deck by 1 by looking at 1 less card.
Which we did see here.
All right, here we go. It's the moment of truth. Triple Marine. So this Marine, on attack, you pay 1, discard 1 Hololive character, burn 2, and gain 2,000 power, I believe.
Yes.
It's the first
2
instance
sticks.
sticking. Going to level 3.
So we need 7 more damage between all of these attacks. So there are 2 2s and a 3, or a 3 and a soul trigger for 4.
Now, I would like to note,
There's
Lacrima,
3 cancels.
Lacrima does not have green to play the money counter, and they also do not have the Argo Brainstorm that would allow you to bypass color condition on your events. So we'll have to see what the incoming damage looks like. We see another
Cancels
cancel.
off the top. Not finding a trigger. That's going to be 3. So we need both. Okay, that.
So
Okay,
this has to be a double soul
has
trigger.
to be the double soul. Ping
Soul for
1,
lethal.
ditch 1, ping 2.
Aw, unfortunate.
Even
No way
with the
you're
stock
getting it
soul,
here.
it's going to be an attack for 3.
I would just like to say that if the stock swap line was possible, that would have been a disgusting
That would have been
stock swap.
the nastiest stock swap ever. That
'Cause
would have been the
burn 2 went in, and
nastiest
then you
stock
just hit
swap.
like 4 climaxes after that. 3 or 4
Oh my
climaxes.
god. Only one of those 6 instances of damage going in, just 2 damage, enough to hit Lacrima to level 3. And Lacrima now in a perfect position to go for his own finisher combo with those Silica level 3s. Going to be able to use her on attack burn 2 into shuffle back 2, put a bunch of extra garbage into Hikawa's deck in case the burn was not enough to finish the job. But we do have just Hikawa sitting here at 3-6, kind of just asking for death. He's just like, just finish me already.
Writing is on the wall, and the wall says it's SAO time. My favorite part of the movie, was when Asuna said it's SAO time and SAO all over the VTubers.
It does seem very unlikely that Hikawa survives here, meaning more than likely we are going to see a 3-for-3
Oh,
Sword
there's that
Art
Silica.
taking first place in these tournaments.
SAO. SAO.
So, with only there are 3 copies of the Silica in the waiting room, so you can discard one and just grab a level 3 Silica off of the first effect, and then use a pay 1 sack to grab the second copy. And we're just gonna see some Silicas come in, and it's all just a formality at this point, I feel.
Yep. Unless let's get
With,
this one up here as well.
Was there already a Silica in hand, I guess, before he started that?
Not sure. I think the last time Alice
going for another Einkrad mill. Refreshing the deck.
If there was another 0 in waiting room, you could actually turn 1 copy of the level 0 into all 3 copies of the 3/2 there. Yeah. Right. Play the first 0, discard, grab the second 0, play it, discard, grab the 3/2, sack both of them, dead the other 2 3/2s.
Yeah. Just a really big example of why I feel that 2 copies of the level 0 Silica is correct. You get to go for some of these crazy lines like this. I like what Connor described, not what Lacrima's going for. Lacrima's going for a very standard play of the level 0 Silica.
Grabbing one.
Lacrima said, I want to refresh my deck.
You think Lacrima might not have the door trigger in hand?
That's what I was about to say. I think Lacrima is maybe doing the same thing Hikawa had issues with. Doesn't have the climax and is just refreshing so that these check tops can actually find it, which Hikawa wasn't able to do and had to use the climax swap instead.
Checking 3, dumping 1, finding another Silica, gonna put that down as well. Opening 3. What do we find? Very fast decisions. I'm guessing that Lacrima was able to find it, but worst comes to worst, we can just slam down vanilla after vanilla after okay, triple. Okay.
Oh, we see the triple.
Oh, he did that thing.
Yeah,
that's when you know.
That's the one.
Yep.
All right, we're going to see the attack here with full board, burn 2.
6 cancels here with at most 6 climaxes in deck because 1 was played and 1 was milled. So there's no way Hikawa survives that.
And that's going to be the game. Wise Meisters. Everybody give a round of applause to Lacrima, the champion of NA, SAO, the set of the game, the set of the format. Everybody will get to know her very well. Her name is Alice. Get familiar with it. But what a game, guys. What a game. Like, many times again, like I said, I think one of the coolest highlights about this game is the fact that Alice was able to run away with the board. Many other times we saw this kind of like matchup. People were able to answer the Alice immediately, but it feels like the lack of tools on HoloLive side of things was their shortcoming, not being able to answer those Alices, letting those Alices sit on board turn after turn after turn, letting Lacrima build that hand advantage, build that board advantage, having so much stock to play around with it. That one turn where Reach is like, you know what? I have the combo in hand, mill 12. I don't care. I'll get another Alice out, full combo again. Still healthy in stock, still healthy in hand, and then boom, triple Silica combo to finish it off. Perfect display of how the deck is supposed to be ran. Rando, give me a quick summary on your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely my attention was just on how poor the situation seemed to be for the HoloLive player. Normally, like 2 Kanatas is probably about the average for what you're looking to get out of a game. Obviously, like triple is like far and beyond like high roll, but not only being able to play just the 1 copy of the Kanata at level 2, but also it seemed like having some troubles finding the climax, having to play that Bay level 0, use her top check 3 ability, and then it just all kind of spiraled out of control from there. We had complete control of the board on Lacrima's side with 3 copies of Alice backed up by counters. It's just like there's no coming back from that situation. And despite HoloLive, specifically this build being a very strong deck in a vacuum, it seems like with a lot of other decks packing very specific answers against these Alices, seem to do a pretty good job, whereas HoloLive kind of has to just play its own game and use the tools that it already had at its disposal with not really anything new to bring to the table in response to the Alice deck.
Connor, give me your thoughts. How do you think that game went? What do you think could have been gone differently? If you were in Hololive side of things, what would you have done?
Yeah, it really is just rough when you're playing the Kanata deck. And, we've said over and over again that these decks are pretty much like all in on their one strategy of setting up the board. And when you don't get it off that first turn, only getting the one Kanata, it just really sets you behind. And it didn't help that Lacrima was already basically a level ahead at that point, and had been getting really good cancels in both games we watched. Just cancels all over the place, staying a level below his opponent. And it's just really hard as Kanata to come back from games like that. And we